Chapter 34:12. Qin Xiu, who was standing next to him, felt a sharp pain in his heart when he heard this. The elders all began to look forward to having great-grandchildren. Ah, Xia Jinyuan was indeed a soldier. He was so efficient. He then looked at Yi Qian out of the corner of his eye. He saw her standing next to Xia Jinyuan and lowering her head because of the elder's words. Just by looking at her side profile, he knew that she was happy and shy. She was only happy for Xia Jinyuan. Qin Xiu sighed softly. He didn't know when he clenched his fists, but he quietly loosened them. Calm down, Qin Xiu. You are nothing. You have no right to disturb her happy life in front of her eyes. He closed his eyes slightly and slowly opened them again. The young diplomat standing next to old Madame Qin was still elegant and calm. He maintained a faint smile on his face. There was nothing strange about him. Old Madame Qin, who didn't notice anything strange about her grandson, first congratulated old Madame Qin on finding her ideal granddaughter-in-law. As she spoke, she secretly observed Yi Qian. The strong old Madame Qin's judgment of people was similar to old Madame Qin's, but she was more selective about family background. She looked at Yi Qian and said kindly, "It's rare to see a delicate face with bright eyes. She is indeed a good child." There was no big family with the surname Yi in the capital, but there was one in Guang province. However, this child's accent was not unique to Guang province. It was obvious that she was not a daughter of that family. Her old friend didn't mention her family background, so she must be a daughter of an ordinary family. With Family Xia's current power, there was no need to pick a girl's family background. As long as she had a good character, it was enough to be presentable. Looking at this daughter, she had to say that Su Rong, who had been secretly competing with her all her life, was really lucky. How could she tell that her family background was ordinary? Her temperament and appearance were first class. Just these 2 points alone were enough to make people not care about family background. Looking at the family Xia, the whole family was happy and harmonious. There was not the slightest bit of unhappiness between the brothers, and the sisters-in-law were also harmonious. They all treated each other as a family. Ever since she stepped through the red lacquer door of the family Xia, she could hear the laughter in the room through the projector wall. A prosperous family was talking about family Xia. Old Madame Qin couldn't help but sigh secretly in her heart. So what if her family background was good? Take her second daughter-in-law as an example. Because her eldest and youngest uncle's families had both married daughters-in-law of high status, she had to work hard to find a daughter-in-law for her grandson, Qin Xiu, whose family background, appearance, and talent were not inferior to those of her eldest and youngest uncle's families. She was picky about this and that. Did she really think that other people's daughters were all cabbages that she could pick and choose? Not only did she pick on her grandson, but she also picked on her granddaughter, Qin Ying's marriage. Now, her granddaughter did not return home all year round and went abroad every day just to avoid being picked on by her mother. She had been competing with Su Rong for a lifetime, but in the end, Su Rong didn't need to compete for anything. She was lucky when she was young, but now that she was old, her luck and fortune were still better than hers. Old Madame Qin sighed in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face and said with a smile, "You are getting more and more lucky as you live. Why can't my grandson find such a good granddaughter-in-law? Her character and family background are not bad, but why is there no movement at all in that marriage line?" Then she said to Yi Qian, "Good daughter, if you know someone for the sake of your grandmother, do me a favor and help my grandson keep an eye out." In response, old Madame Qin laughed loudly and said, You are still young even when you are old. You're starting to have ideas about me again. You want sixth brother's wife to introduce a girlfriend to your grandson? She has to line up. Our family's Laowu just asked her to help him find one. Chapter 34:13. Hearing this, old Madame Qin laughed and said, "That's great. 1 is an introduction. 2 is also an introduction. Why don't they do it together?" Then she said to Qin Xiu, who was talking to Xia Jinyuan and the others, "Come, Qin Xiu, come and thank your sister-in-law. Maybe she can really introduce a good wife to you." Old Madame Qin didn't know what her grandson was thinking. Her action was undoubtedly rubbing salt in Qin Xiu's heart. Xia Jinyuan sympathized with his love rival. He felt sorry for him when he asked the person he liked to introduce a girlfriend to him. In this situation, he didn't need to say anything to make Qin Xiu suffer. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but smile. He wasn't a kind person. It was already very gentlemanly of him not to add insult to injury when he saw his love rival suffering. Qin Xiu's heart wasn't rubbed with salt, but a cold wind. His heart was so cold that there was no heat. His blood gradually turned cold, and his body almost didn't feel any heat. Grandma was, alas. Qin Xiu sighed without a trace. He walked to old Madame Qin's side, took a deep look at Yi Qian, and then said to old Madame Qin with a helpless expression, "Grandma, please save some face for me. I'm 28 years old. I'm also embarrassed that you're spreading the net for me everywhere." In front of the elderly, Qin Xiu had always been filial and never said anything harsh. He only said things that made the elderly feel comfortable. He was also a man of good character and filial piety. Hearing this, old Madame Qin smiled and glared at her grandson. "You also know that you're 28 years old. Why don't you bring back a granddaughter-in-law for me as soon as possible? Look at a Yuan, who is 1 year younger than you. He's so fast that I'm envious." Qin Xiu couldn't say anything. He could only sigh in his heart. "It's not that I don't want to bring a granddaughter-in-law, but the granddaughter-in-law I like has been taken away in advance." Unable to tell the truth, he maintained a gentle smile and agreed. "Don't worry, there will be such a day. How can I be at ease? Let's go and learn from my Yuan and see how he managed to woo such a beautiful and dignified girl." Because he was thick-skinned enough, he had already targeted Yi Qian when he was still in junior high school. When he was in high school, he couldn't help but make his move. That's why Sun Tzu, was a little late. Qin Xiu smiled at Yi Qian, then turned back to talk to Xia Jinyuan and the others. Other than the glance he gave Yi Qian when he entered the room, and the deep glance he gave Yi Qian just now, he did not spare any extra glances. It was as if he had never met or interacted with Yi Qian, and he had never confessed to Yi Qian. Everything he did was as calm as water, and he did not evade or avoid it, nor did he make things difficult for Yi Qian. Some bandit gentlemen were like gold or tin or jade. Qin Xiu was such a man. Old Madame was afraid that Qin Xiu would feel uncomfortable, so she simply said to the juniors who were still sitting in the room, Okay, you guys go and play on your own. Old 6, old 5, you guys are about the same age, so let's have a chat." On Yi Qian's side, Zhou Yijin whispered, "Aunt Lu, help me ask Qin Xiu's phone number later. Several of our comrades in the phone company like him. Every time they saw Qin Xiu appear on TV, even if it was just a small shot, they couldn't help but want to scream. Their eyes lit up, and they wished they could squeeze into the TV screen and shake hands with Diplomat Qin. They really didn't expect that the Diplomat Qin they liked would come to Grandma's house. She could show off for a few days when she returned to the company. They were all envious. Chapter 34:14. Yi Qian originally wanted to tease her by saying, "What? Have you taken a fancy to him?" But when he turned his head, he didn't see anything strange on Zhou Yijin's face. There was only that kind of excitement to watch a good show. He knew that the girl in front of him didn't have any other feelings for Qin Xiu. She was just curious. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and smiled. "If you want to know, go ask him yourself. If I go ask him, I'm afraid that Brother Lu will be jealous." It had only been half a month since Qin Xiu confessed to her that they met again. He really did what he said at that time. They would be friends even if they met again and wouldn't embarrass her. He was a gentleman and kept his word. When they met again at Family Xia, she couldn't see anything strange from his eyes, face, and actions. He was still that elegant and noble young diplomat. Yi Qian was used to believing in Qin Xiu's character. Zhou Yijin thought about it and agreed. She couldn't let Yi Qian take the opportunity to ask for Diplomat Qin's phone number. Then she would ask Brother Wu and Brother Lu. Her dark eyes looked around cleverly. Fourth sister-in-law, who was sitting next to her, saw this and pursed her lips into a smile. She quietly joked, "What? Our Yijin also thinks that Qin Xiu is not bad. From fourth sister-in-law's point of view, as long as you are interested, You and Qin Xiu won't have any problems being together. Old Madam Qin will definitely be happy. As for Mrs. Qin, she will also be very happy. Jin's family background, appearance, and talent were all good. Even she knew that Mrs. Qin was very picky about her future daughter-in-law. As long as the two of them were interested, she definitely wouldn't stop them. Unfortunately, Zhou Yijin wasn't interested in Qin Xiu. No one knew that she didn't want her husband, who couldn't come home all year round. Her family was full of soldiers, and she had seen too many sad things that outsiders didn't know about. Take fourth sister-in-law, for example. When she gave birth to her nephew, her water broke in the middle of the night and fourth brother couldn't come home. Fourth sister-in-law took care of everything by herself. From the hospital to the birth of her nephew, fourth brother didn't know anything. Later, when her nephew was 1 month old, fourth brother rushed back. Such an unyielding man hugged fourth sister-in-law tightly and cried in front of the family. Fourth sister-in-law tried her best to comfort him, saying that she was fine, that everything was fine with the family, and that fourth brother didn't worry. In the end, fourth brother, who had been quietly crying, suddenly burst into tears. Both the children and the adults had been given notices of critical illness. Because her husband was not by her side, her second aunt signed on behalf of the family members. And big brother, second brother, third brother, they were all the same, especially third brother. He didn't even know that sister-in-law was pregnant. When he came back, sister-in-law carried his little nephew to welcome him. He even asked foolishly, "Whose baby did you bring home? Don't tell me one of them gave birth to a nephew for me." Third sister-in-law didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Your biological son," and shut the door on third brother, whose face was full of stubble. Later, third brother called to ask and found out that third sister-in-law was carrying his biological son. Sigh. Mom told me later that third brother was so angry that he wanted to slap himself. He didn't know that third sister-in-law was pregnant and didn't know that she gave birth. Third brother, who couldn't even recognize his biological son, felt guilty and blamed himself. During the month when he came home, he served third sister-in-law so well that he even gave her a handkerchief to wash her face with. Take eldest brother, for example. He was a little luckier, but when eldest sister-in-law was in the hospital, he was called back to the army. He didn't even have time to greet eldest sister-in-law who was in the delivery room. He only left her a note and left in a hurry. Chapter 34:15. After her eldest brother left, she, who was still in junior high school at that time, quietly opened the note out of curiosity. It said, "I'm sorry, wife. I have to go back to the army." There were a few drops of water on the note. Those were her eldest brother's tears of self-reproach. Sigh. Let's not talk about other things. Anyway, from junior high school until she graduated from university, she was a witness to her brothers' and sisters-in-law's matters. No one knew more about her sisters-in-law's sadness than her. Who asked her to study in the capital? She knew everything that happened at home. When her sisters-in-law gave birth to little nephews, she was there the whole time. When other women gave birth, their husbands would kiss and hug them. What about her sisters-in-law? She didn't even see the shadow of her husband. She had seen too much, and it left a psychological shadow in her heart. She smiled and replied to her fourth sister-in-law, who teased her, "I don't plan to find a boyfriend who might not be able to accompany me no matter what. I don't have a strong heart like my sisters-in-law. I can't accept it." When she said this, her sisters-in-law were stunned. Fourth sister-in-law reacted and raised her hand to gently touch Zhou Yijin's head. She smiled and said, "Yes, with our sister Jin's qualifications, you can find a boyfriend who can take good care of you. Don't look for someone like your brothers. I also advise you not to look for one." Tiredness, bitterness, she had experienced all of it. If she wasn't strong enough, she might not be able to get through it. That was why sixth brother was smart. He found a like-minded girlfriend so that they could understand and support each other. That was the best outcome. After the other sisters-in-law reacted, they first glanced at Yi Qian. The eldest sister-in-law even gently patted the back of Yi Qian's hand to comfort him silently. Other than not being able to accompany his wife often, men with family xia were very good in other aspects. Although most of them had to shoulder the big and small matters at home, they were still envied by their friends. There was no other reason. Their husbands made them worry less. Although they couldn't accompany them often, as long as they were home, they didn't even need to do the housework themselves. They could put down their status and didn't need to interfere with washing or cooking. This was very good. How could a person be perfect in this life? 9 out of 10 times, life didn't go well. However, compared to many other families, the things that didn't go well in their lives were nothing. With her husband doting on her, her parents-in-law doting on her, and the whole family helping each other, it was enough to make her happy. Yichien knew why his sister-in-law was gently patting her hand. He tilted his head and pursed his lips into a gentle smile. There was an indescribable strength in his bright eyes, which made his sister-in-law smile even more. Six Brothers' wife was stronger than they had imagined. Soon, the old madam gave the order, and the juniors all got up and left to chat. Old Madam and Old Master Chin invited the two elders of the Chin family to the guest hall. They ate fruits and reminisced about the past. They chatted happily even without the younger generation's company. Discarding all the misunderstandings and prejudices of the past, they calmly recalled the past when they were old. When the past was brought up, they couldn't help but lament that they were young and ignorant. It was just a small matter, and they could get over it with a smile. However, it became a knot in their hearts. Thinking about it now, they found it funny. The elders didn't interfere in the affairs of the younger generation, and the elders didn't hang out with the children and grandchildren. Aunt Xia Sujuan proposed a round of national treasures, which was unanimously approved by the aunts and aunts. Thus, eldest aunt, second aunt, youngest aunt, and third aunt just happened to sit at a table. Soon, the sound of mahjong playing could be heard. Chapter 34:16. Eldest uncle and the others didn't mind and pulled Uncle Zhou and the others to play a game of leveling up. Thus, eldest uncle, Commander-in-Chief Xia, youngest uncle, and Uncle Zhou sat at the same table again. The two uncles went to the chess room in the backyard and started a new round of chess. The elders found their own ways to relax and entertain themselves. The children didn't want to be left out and started to play snowmen under the care of the servants. The guards who came with eldest uncle and Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't have to stand guard at this time. They simply became the king of the children and led the children to build snowmen. The guard were also proficient in all kinds of martial arts. The four of them even played a competition to see who could build a snowman first. When the children saw this, they were so happy that they clapped their hands. Ho Zi and Xia Yiwei's children could have been sitting peacefully in the house. However, when they heard the children's laughter outside, the children, who were only a few months old, knew that they wanted to join in the fun and cried at the top of their lungs. They cried until the couple couldn't coax them in the house. In the end, the servants who were taking care of them reminded them if they should take them out for a walk. Although it was cold outside, the sun was warm. It was still okay to wear warm clothes and cover up tightly. Unable to coax the children, the couple carried them out. As soon as they came out, they were surprised. The two children who were crying at the top of their lungs actually stopped crying. Xia Yiwei couldn't help but gently pinch the children's tender cheeks in her arms. You guys are just like your brothers when they were young. You all want to go out and play. Hozi hugged his little princess and laughed. Isn't it great? You should go out for a walk. It's so boring to stay at home all day, isn't it, my little darling? After saying that, he raised his daughter high in his arms, making the delicate little girl giggle. The children were laughing, and the adults were laughing. The red lanterns hanging under the eaves swayed with the wind, as if spreading family Xia's laughter far, far away. Yichien and his sisters-in-law sat together and started to play cards. After playing a few rounds, Zhou Yijin, who was sitting next to Yichien, swallowed her saliva several times. This was because she realized that Yichien seemed to be counting cards. Just like now, third sister-in-law didn't even play a card. Aunt Lu seemed to know what third sister-in-law would play in advance. Her slender fingers had already touched the card she was going to play later. As soon as third sister-in-law played, Aunt Lu drew and put down the card without any consideration. After a few rounds, Zhou Yijin could see that something was up. In fact, Yi Qian did not calculate carefully. There were only a few dozen cards. She remembered what she had in her hands and what was on the table. She could guess what cards third sister-in-law and fourth sister-in-law had in their hands. Eldest sister-in-law and second sister-in-law didn't play, and all the younger generations were looking for entertainment. It wouldn't be good if no one responded to old madam and old master's orders. Xia Lingxiao and Xia Yiding didn't play either. They were both accompanying their wives. They were the type that couldn't be coaxed away. The two sisters-in-law were used to this. After glaring at the two brothers, they ignored them and walked around the room to chat. They felt that it was more interesting than sitting and playing cards. After second sister-in-law walked around Yi Qian's table, Xia Yiding looked to the side and smiled meaningfully. It's difficult for the two of you to win against sixth sister-in-law. He could tell at a glance that Yi Qian had memorized all the cards. Playing these small cards was like an adult playing against a 3-year-old child. He won without any pressure. When Yi Qian heard this, he knew that second brother had noticed something. He looked up and smiled at Xia Yiding. He continued to play cards. "I'm sorry, sisters-in-law. I won again." Third sister-in-law pursed her lips and smiled. "You guys have fun. Don't worry about me. I'm only looking at Xiao Yi to see if she really knows what card you're going to play." Third sister-in-law also smiled and said, "Xiao Yi is the main point. Otherwise, we wouldn't have given up our seats so easily." The two sisters-in-law didn't need their husbands to stand up for them. They were just playing for fun. However, their cousin said that Xiao Yi knew what cards they were going to play, so they wanted to stand aside and see if that was the case. "Since we're not playing with money, let's play something new. We'll play within 3 seconds. What do you think?" Xia Jinyuan proposed a new rule. After the player plays, the next player has to play within 3 seconds. Those who don't play within 3 seconds will be counted and have to take out their biggest card. What do you think? It was an interesting new rule. This way, they could see who reacted faster. Chapter 34:18. There was no need for the people sitting at the table to express their opinions. Third sister-in-law and fourth sister-in-law had already agreed. Yi Qian naturally had no objections. Whether it was fast or slow didn't matter to her, and it wouldn't affect her ability to remember the cards. She nodded, and Xia Jinyuan began to shuffle the cards to start the game. Qin Xiu, who was watching from the side, saw that Yi Qian had already integrated into family Xia's life and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. His eyes darkened, and the bitterness in his heart deepened. Compared to family Xia's open-minded family, the Qin family was much more conservative. His mother was very particular about family background. Last night, his grandmother had only said that family background wasn't the most important thing now. As long as the family was clean, it didn't matter if the family background was slightly worse. His mother was afraid that his grandmother would introduce him to a girl with an average family background, so she immediately smiled and said, "You're right, but the world is different now. It's only because the world is different that it's worrying. What kind of child do you think a girl with a slightly worse family background can raise? No matter how good her character is, she's still inexperienced. It's not easy to be the daughter-in-law of the Qin family. If she has a good character, but she's inexperienced, how can she handle everything? If she doesn't pay attention to what she says and offend someone, people will think that the Qin family is doing this on purpose." If he could hear the hidden meaning in his mother's words, how could his grandmother not? She just smiled and didn't say anything else. In the end, it was still about family background. Yi Qian was good in all aspects, and he was confident that his family Xiao would accept her, but it was impossible for them to accept Yi Qian as sincerely as family Xia. Xia Jinyuan did it. He made everyone in family Xia accept Yi Qian and sincerely treat Yi Qian as family. They didn't look down on Yi Qian because of her background. On the contrary, they protected Yi Qian and respected Yi Qian. In this aspect, Qin Xiu was definitely inferior to Xia Jinyuan. He felt ashamed. For the sake of Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan must have done a lot in secret, but what about him? Since she hadn't put in any effort, it wasn't surprising that she hadn't won Yi Qian's heart. Looking at the tacit understanding between the two of them, Those who didn't know better would think that the two of them were exchanging cards. When Xia Jinyuan played a card, Yi Qian would purse his lips and smile when he saw Xia Jinyuan's eyes. With one look, Xia Jinyuan would understand what Xia Jinyuan meant. The two of them went back and forth, and the other two family Xia brothers were on high alert, not daring to be distracted. You two are not allowed to make eye contact. Xia Yujing, Yi Qian's next player, missed 2 rounds of playing cards. After taking out a pair of twos and a pair of old kings, he finally couldn't help but say, "A new rule." Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and replied lazily, "You're the older brother. You have the final say." Xia Yui glanced at him and continued to stare at the cards in his hand and on the table. Yi Qian smiled until his eyes turned into crescents. He also didn't have any objections to the new rule. Qin Xiu lowered his eyes slightly and suppressed the bitterness in his heart. The expression on his face finally couldn't hold on any longer, and he revealed a hint of bitterness. With his mind preoccupied, he didn't notice that Xia Yunin, who mingled in the field of love, had been discreetly sizing him up a few times. When Xia Yunin took one last look, there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. Who would have thought that the famous diplomat of the Qin dynasty would have taken a liking to old Six's girlfriend? He hit it well. I almost didn't see through him. Later, he had to remind old Six that this young diplomat of the Qin family was no ordinary man. He was so outstanding that he had to be strictly guarded against. Chapter 34:19. How could Xia Yunin tolerate his sister-in-law being coveted by others, especially by such an excellent diplomat? If it were someone else, he wouldn't care, but Qin Xiu was different. He was the youngest diplomat, the most promising one, and even his father couldn't help but praise him. He had only heard his father praise 2 young people of the same generation. One was Li Jinyan, the grandson of Old Man Li, and the other was Qin Xiu, the grandson of Old Man Qin. Both of them were giants among men and were the ideal son-in-law for many noble ladies in the capital. He didn't expect that Qin Xiu also had his eyes on old Six's girlfriend. Although he had good taste, he was with the wrong person. Xia Yunin's eyes flashed with coldness. Just as he was about to remind Xia Jinyuan, Qin Xiu seemed to have sensed it and looked over. Qin Xiu smiled and naturally looked away to see the 4 people who were playing cards quickly. How could he be so magnanimous after being caught? Xia Yunin couldn't help narrowing his eyes. He suddenly thought of the interaction between old Six and Qin Xiu. It didn't seem like the first time they met, but they knew each other. Could it be that old Six already knew that Qin Xiu liked Xiaoya? If he knew, then he didn't have to remind him. With old Six's intelligence, he would know how to deal with it. Then again, even if Qin Xiu had a good impression of old Six's wife, he wasn't afraid. Xiaoyi obviously only had old Six in her eyes. Moreover, when the two of them were playing cards, old Fourth reminded them not to make eye contact. It could be seen that the two of them had a very good tacit understanding. Xia Yunin thought for a while, and his heart settled down. Take old Six's wife, for example. Even the elders were full of praise for her. It was normal for her to have a few admirers and suitors. As long as old Six knew what was going on and their relationship was good, no matter how many admirers she had outside, there was nothing to be afraid of. Besides, with Qin Xiu's character and upbringing in the Qin family, he wouldn't do something as immoral as stealing someone's love, unless old Six couldn't stand the test. With this thought, Xia Yunin quickly forgot about Qin Xiu liking Yi Qian and stopped worrying. When it came to matters of the heart, no matter how much outsiders worried, they weren't the ones involved. Everyone focused on Yi Qian. Yi Qian played the last card in her hand, indicating that she had won. Xia Yujing had 4 cards, Xia Jinyuan had 1, and Xia Yui had 3. Yi won this round. They played a few more rounds, and Yi Jian always maintained the speed of playing cards within 3 seconds. Every time Xia Yui put down his cards, she would have already drawn her cards, and she would finish within 3 seconds. She didn't make eye contact with Xia Jinyuan, but both of them could remember the cards. Even if one hand turned into 2 hands, Yi Qian could still remember how many kings and tens were on the table. Out of 10 rounds, she and Xia Jinyuan won 6 rounds, while Xia Yujing and Xia Yui won 4 rounds. The winner and loser were decided. Xia Yui smiled and said, "Looks like Xiaoya's memory is really good. She didn't count the cards, but just remembered what cards were on the table, and she could roughly guess what cards we had. Your fourth brother and I admit defeat." Both of them had good memories, but it was still difficult to play cards within 3 seconds. If they thought for a few more seconds, they could also calculate each other's cards, but Yi Qian was clearly better. Xia Jinyuan was never stingy with his compliments to his girlfriends. He was even happier when he praised Yi Qian than when he praised himself. Hearing this, his thin lips curved into a smile, and he said, "My girlfriend's memory is better than you think." She must have held back just now because she didn't want third brother and fourth brother to lose too badly. Yi Qian wondered if she should give her boyfriend face. She really didn't hold back just now. Chapter 34:20. Just as she was about to explain, Xia Jinyuan winked at her, hinting for her to keep quiet and let him handle the situation. Yi Qian gave him a look, hinting for him not to think too highly of himself. He wasn't that good. Xia Jinyuan smiled elegantly. His handsome face was so gentle that the sisters-in-law couldn't help but laugh. These two people are so sweet that honey is oozing out of them. They're still exchanging glances in front of us. Aren't we too much of an eyesore? Should we withdraw and give the young couple some dating space? Fourth sister-in-law took the lead to tease. Third sister-in-law quickly followed. "We were playing cards just now, but we still glanced at you and me. You can see how much of an eyesore we are. Let's go. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid sixth brother is going to hate us. It's obviously a good date, but we're the pillars of support. Sixth brother must be feeling very aggrieved right now." The more the sisters-in-law joked about Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian, the calmer Xia Jinyuan became. He wasn't afraid at all. On the other hand, Yi Qian's face was already as red as rouge, making him look even more charming. His eyes were fixed on Zhou Jin. Qin Xiu had already left. He couldn't stay any longer. If he stayed any longer, he would only make himself suffer. Even though he knew there was no hope, he couldn't let it go so easily. Just as the family was chatting and laughing, Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was supposed to be relaxing, walked over. He didn't say anything, but smiled and gestured for Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian to follow him out. No one knew his father better than his son, and no one knew his son better than his father. No matter how big the smile on Commander-in-Chief Xia's face was, Xia Jinyuan could tell that there was something wrong with his old man's eyes. Something must have happened. He stood up with a smile on his face, held Yi Qian's hand, and said to his brother and sisters-in-law, "Excuse me, let's play a few more rounds later." They wouldn't have the chance to play later. Commander-in-Chief Xia left the old house with Xia Jinyuan and Yi Jian and went to the military headquarters. Qin Xiu, who had been taking a breather outside, saw the three of them leave. His footsteps were hurried, as if something had happened. He was slightly startled and went back into the house. He heard old Madame Xia say with a smile, "It's always like this. I have to go to an emergency meeting immediately. I'm used to it." "How can you not be used to it? We were like this when we were young. I remember there was a problem with the ingredients. I was washing my hair when I answered the phone. I was scared. To leave with my hair to. Old Madame Qin answered with a smile. When she saw Qin Xiu coming over from the corner of her eye, she smiled and said, "He's the same." 1 second, he was still eating with the old man and me. The next second, he left the table to work. There were several times when I wanted to call the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and ask them if they still let him eat properly. That's right. I also wanted to call and ask, but I held myself back. Now that they were talking about a common topic, the two old madams chatted again. The more they talked, the more excited they became. As for why Commander-in-Chief Xia and the other two left in such a hurry, they didn't care. They were used to it, so there was no need to make a fuss. Qin Xiu, who had left the house again, frowned slightly as he looked at the messy footprints in the snow. Yi Qian had walked past here just now. Among the messy footprints, there were also her hurried footprints. He could understand why Commander-in-Chief Xia and Xia Jinyuan were called back by the military headquarters. But why was Yi Qian also called back? Yi Qian was just a military school student. Why was Yi Qian also called back? Chapter 34:21. Qin Xiao, who knew a little about Yi Qian's situation, couldn't help but wonder. However, this wasn't something he could know, so even though he had doubts, he could only suppress them in his heart. However, he couldn't deny that after Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan left, he finally had a chance to breathe. Earlier, even though he tried his best not to pay attention to the interaction between the two of them, their voices, the joking voices of the family Xiao brothers, and their wives came from all directions. It was like a net binding him, like a mountain pressing down on him, making him feel suffocated all the time. In the future, wherever they were, he would have to stay away from them. Qin Xiao clenched his fists as he stood under the eaves. Even with the warm winter sun shining on him, he still felt desolate in his heart. It was so cold that his fingers were trembling, and he could only calm himself by clenching his fists. He really didn't expect that there would be a day when he couldn't get what he wanted. No, he hadn't even started to ask for it, but it was destined that he couldn't get what he wanted. With a bitter smile, Qin Xiao let out a very soft sigh. If he couldn't get what he wanted, then there was no need to ask anymore. So be it. Let nature take its course. Don't think about it anymore. Don't deliberately avoid it. The family Xia's laughter continued. Zhou Yijin sat in Yi Qian's previous seat and imitated him. Just like this, when third sister-in-law played, I saw Aunt Lu's lips curl up slightly as if she was saying, "I knew you would play this card." Then Aunt Lu played. She even knew what fourth sister-in-law would play next. After she played, fourth sister-in-law continued to laugh when fourth sister-in-law spoke. Oh my God, she laughed so hard that my heart twitched. I was actually a little scared. She remembered all the cards and even knew what cards the other person had. I've heard of people who are very good at playing cards, but I didn't expect Aunt Lu to know how to do it too. Also, just now when third brother and fourth brother were playing, I even saw Aunt Lu raise her eyebrows. Even if you were playing, she wouldn't be afraid. Anyway, she knows. Aunt Lu also said that she hasn't played cards for a long, long time. If I didn't know that she's a military school student, I wouldn't believe that she hasn't played cards for a long, long time. She was obviously older than Yi Qian, but she didn't feel awkward at all when she called out Aunt Lu. The other sisters-in-law couldn't help but laugh. Just now, sixth brother's wife's husband had said that her memory and mathematics were good. It was normal for her to calculate the cards in other people's hands based on her own cards and the cards on the table. There was no need to make a fuss because they could do it too. It was just that they were slightly slower and couldn't do it within 3 seconds. In other words, they were slightly inferior. Of course, they wouldn't say such embarrassing words in front of their wives. Zhou Yijin didn't see through the subtle thoughts of her cousins and continued to talk about how good Aunt Lu was. After all, the eldest sister-in-law was the eldest sister-in-law. She could see the subtle thoughts of her younger brothers-in-law. She smiled and said, "Yijin, your Aunt Lu is 3 years younger than you. Why don't you feel any pressure at all and call her Aunt Lu directly? Don't you feel awkward?" There was a moment of silence. Then Zhou Yijin blinked and screamed in horror. What? Aunt Lu? She's younger than me? How is that possible? Why do I feel like she's older than me? How could she be younger than me? This question really stumped them. It also made them realize that it seemed to be true. They didn't feel that Yi Qian was younger than Yijin. They always felt that Yijin was younger than Xiao Yi. In fact, Yi Qian was younger than Zhou Yijin by 3 years. After the new year, Yi Qian would be 21 years old and Zhou Yijin would be 24 years old. Chapter 34:22. However, Yi Qian made everyone think that she was older than Zhou Yijin. From her speech and behavior, she looked older than Zhou Yijin. If one were to talk about physiognomy, one could see that she was much younger. I think I can understand why Old Six was able to confess to Xiao Yi when she was still in high school. Xiao Yi is much more mature than other high school girls, so Old Six directly ignored Xiao Ye's actual age. Xi's sister-in-law directly revealed the truth. Xia Jinyuan did indeed think so back then. After seeing how Yi Qian handled matters and how fearless she was on the battlefield, it was too easy for people to ignore her actual age. After living 2 lives and experiencing so many ups and downs, It was difficult for Yi Qian to have the naivety that people her age should have. Naturally, she was much more mature in dealing with matters and naturally gave people the wrong impression. Today, if Xiaoling Xiao's wife hadn't mentioned it, the entire family Xia, including Zhou Yijin, wouldn't have thought that Yi Qian was actually younger than Zhou Yijin. Qin Xiu stood for a long time and breathed out a sigh of relief. He no longer stayed outside the house where he could hear the name Yi Qian from time to time. Instead, he found an excuse to leave the family Xia to get some fresh air. He had promised to stay away, so he had to keep his promise from now on. When Xia Yanin heard Qin Xiu say that he wanted to go out for a walk, her eyes flashed slightly. There was a faint and clear smile in her eyes. This young diplomat was indeed someone worth befriending. No wonder old Six could still talk and laugh with him, even when he knew. When the old madam heard that Yi Qian could easily be misunderstood as being older than her own granddaughter, she didn't say anything to the younger generation in front of them. When night fell, she said to the old master, "Old Six's family has suffered. Sigh, this child is lucky that after suffering comes happiness. Otherwise, who knows how she would be tortured by that family." Yi Qian still didn't know that the old madam had once again taken pity on him that night. At this moment, she was already sitting in the carriage. Her expression was cold, and her clear eyes were filled with hostility. In the depths of her pupils, there was a murderous aura surging. She already knew that because of Sun Ying, Principal Chen's identity had been exposed. Now, the news was still sealed in the country and had not been spread abroad through special channels. However, nothing was absolute. Sun Ying has a pistol in her hand. The target is a key surveillance target. If she makes any dangerous moves, she will be dealt with immediately. She's been looking for you all over the place, and they've already found evidence of Li Chuhai overseas. They're starting to close the net. Yi Qian, you're invited to this meeting. It's very likely that you'll be directly involved in the operation. You have to be mentally prepared. In the car, Commander-in-Chief Xia first told Yi Qian that Principal Chen's identity had been exposed. Sure enough, after Yi Qian heard about it, her smiling expression suddenly became stern. Her entire temperament changed drastically. She was no longer as gentle as she was at the family Xia. She was fierce and cold. Yi Qian listened quietly before saying, "If this meeting is about the next step of the operation, I'm very willing to participate." Sun Ying had reached the point where she had to be eliminated. She believed that the leaders involved in the case had already realized this, so she was invited to participate in this meeting. Just as Yi Qian had guessed, not only had Sun Ying reached the point where she had to be brought to justice, but it was also time to bring to justice the mastermind behind Sun Xueqing's sacrifice. On the 4th day of the new year, the entire nation was still immersed in the festive atmosphere. A large net was quietly pulled open to remove the malignant tumor. Chapter 34-23. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the car, finally understood why her mother's case was progressing so slowly even with the involvement of the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection, the Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of National Defense. The net was too wide, so wide that she realized how terrifying the situation was. Smuggling, reselling. How dare they? How dare they? Currently, we have more than 80% of the evidence. We can prove that martyr Sun Xueqing's sacrifice wasn't an accident. It was because she knew who was behind this, but she didn't have time to report it to her superiors. Perhaps we can say that before she knew who was trustworthy, they had already been discovered. In order to hide the evidence of their crimes, martyr Sun Xueqing sacrificed herself. Most of these people were dealt with back then, but the main target escaped because he had time to spare. This person is now a very successful businessman, but also a very dangerous one. He has close ties with foreign criminals and has a rather large underground market. Now, this person, Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was sitting in the back seat with Yi Qian, took out a photo from a file and handed it to Yi Qian. This is the bodyguard of our main target. He is also in charge of handling important domestic matters. Sun Ying has been in contact with him since she returned to China, but our main target has never contacted Sun Ying. Sun Ying only knows that the person who arranged for her to go abroad was her boss, but she doesn't know who her boss is. The man in the photo was holding a gun with one hand and looking straight ahead. This person's gaze was sinister, and his lips were extremely thin. When he pursed his lips, he exuded a sinister aura. He held the gun with one hand and looked straight ahead. His expression was so cold that it seemed to carry a dark aura. Just from the photo, it was clear that this person was a dangerous person. Yi Qian's pupils constricted as she took the photo. This person, she had seen him before. She had seen him before. Not in this life, but in Yi Ying's previous life. Back then, in order to get the household register from Yi Jifan, she had seen this man when she was waiting outside Yi Jifan's house. Yi Jifan was very polite to this person and even personally opened the car door for this man to get in. Did Yi Jifan already know why her mother sacrificed herself at that time? Was Yi Jifan already planning to get rid of her at that time? Yi Qian's emotions fluctuated a little. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on the photo. She pursed her lips and looked up at Commander-in-Chief Xia. She suppressed the huge fluctuations in her heart and asked calmly, "So, this person is also helping Sunning to get rid of me, right?" "You can put it that way." "Why? Have you seen him?" Even Yi Qian's emotions. Commander-in-Chief's expression. When, where, and when. Where? She couldn't say that she had seen him in her previous life. Yi Qian took a deep breath and pursed her lips. "I don't think we met face to face. If we met face to face, I won't forget the murderous look in his eyes. It's very likely that we met face to face by accident. So, I have a vague impression of him, but it's not too deep." Commander-in-Chief Xia breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that they didn't meet face to face. This meant that they still treated Yi Qian the same as before. They didn't think that Yi Qian could threaten them. "We've already started to close the net overseas. Sun Ying's side is almost done. Let's go back to the military and see if it's related to your mother's case. If it is, then this case will come to an end." Chapter 34-24. On the fourth day of the Lunar New Year, Yi Qian arrived at the military headquarters at 11 in the morning and did not leave until 3 in the afternoon. Commander-in-Chief Xia said to Xia Jinyuan, "You two don't have to go to the old mansion anymore. I'll go back and tell old madam and old master that you have to go out on business. But accompany Xiao Yi back to Dangawei Garden and report the matter to your father-in-law. It doesn't have to be too detailed, just a rough idea will do." There was no time to go to family Xia's old mansion, so he could only choose to return to Dangawei Garden first. Yi Qian walked out of the military headquarters with a solemn expression that was colder than the cold wind. He saluted Commander-in-Chief Xia and said, "Commander-in-Chief, thank you. You don't have to thank me. This is what I should do. In the battle between justice and evil, we will always stand on the side of justice." Commander-in-Chief Xia smiled and said, "The flight will be at 8 in the evening. There are still a few hours left. Go quickly. Xiao Yi, you have to be careful in the next few days. Your itinerary will be exposed as soon as you set foot in Nan Province. Sunning has a gun, and she only has one target. You have to be careful. Killing Yi Qian, this was Sun Ying's only goal after returning to China. She also believed that she could achieve her goal." Yi Qian pursed his lips and replied to Commander-in-Chief Xia with a dark look in his eyes, "And I also only have one target. Unfortunately, I can't get what I want." She could not kill Yi Ying in advance because of her identity. Unless Sunning took the initiative to hurt someone and did something that endangered public safety, she could not do anything. Yi Jian couldn't make a move. She could only tie Sun Ying to the law. Yi Jian actually wanted to eliminate Sun Ying's final destination rather than just tie Sun Ying to the law. Commander-in-Chief Xia sighed softly and said, "Sometimes, no matter how unwilling you are, you have to accept it calmly." So far, Sunning has not committed any fatal crimes in China. She didn't even know about Principal Chen's identity beforehand. She only mentioned it unintentionally and aroused his suspicion. "I know what you're thinking. Just bear with it. Don't forget that the family you care about the most is waiting for your safe return." Yi Jian nodded gently and said, "Don't worry. I know what I should do." Yi Jian nodded gently. "All right, come back early. Have a safe and smooth journey." Commander-in-Chief Xia was not worried about Yi Qian. He then instructed Xia Jinyuan, who was secretly following them, keep an eye on this side and protect Xiao Yi well. To be on the safe side, Xia Jinyuan would secretly protect Yi Qian. If the situation went south, he would immediately provide support. This was a request made by Commander-in-Chief Xia. The main purpose of this operation was to arrest Sun Ying and take advantage of the situation to lure out the Asian man who had been in contact with Sun Ying. They would further control this person and cut off the mastermind's contact with the outside world. Then, they would launch a surprise attack to complete the operation in China. Previously, when Yi Qian asked why they didn't take the mastermind into custody first and then further control the Asian man, the head of the National Defense Department told her that the Asian man was far more dangerous than the mastermind. This was because he was a member of a mercenary group. If there was any news about the mastermind, it would be spread abroad through him. Only then did Yi Qian realize that the darkness outside the country could infiltrate the country through the Asian man. Therefore, the only way was to control him first. After saying what needed to be said, Commander-in-Chief Xia gestured for the two of them to go to Dengui Garden first. They had finally won the final victory in the case of martyr son Xueqing. He didn't want any more mishaps to happen along the way. Everything had to go smoothly. After Father Fu found out, in front of Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan, he only said, "I'll wait for your good news." Then, he didn't say anything else. As for how he felt, only Father Fu himself knew. Chapter 34-25. The two of them went to Southern Province to carry out a mission without telling Old Master Fu. They only said that they wanted to go back to Southern Province to visit martyr son Xueqing. When Old Master Fu found out, he thought that they were going to visit martyr son Xueqing and wanted to go with them. He said, "Your mother has been married to the Fu family for more than 20 years, but I have never seen her. I should go and visit her." In order not to worry Old Master Fu, he found the most suitable reason. He did not expect Old Master Fu to want to go with them. Father Fu advised, "Let's wait until the weather is warmer. It's snowing heavily in Southern Province now. I just saw the weather forecast. There will be more snow in Southern Province tomorrow. If it wasn't for the heavy snow in Southern Province in the next few days, I wouldn't let them go back tonight. When the weather is warmer, I will go with you to visit Hongmei and Uncle Jin, who raised Jane Eyre. This time, you can't come with us. Your health is more important." Yi Qian quickly said, "Grandpa, my father is right. It will be snowing heavily in the next few days. Southern Province is in the south, unlike the north. There is no heating in the house. Your rheumatism is not suitable for you to go to Southern Province now. If you suffer there, my mother will blame herself. When the weather is warmer, my father and I will accompany you." Xia Jinyuan also advised, "Grandpa, rest well at home and wait for Jane Eyre and I to come back. When I come back, I will play 2 more rounds with you. The last round with you has not been decided yet." His son advised him, his granddaughter advised him, and his son-in-law, who he was satisfied with, also advised him. Old Master Fu thought about it and looked at the weather. Indeed, it would be snowing heavily in Southern Province in the next few days. It was not suitable for him to travel. If he insisted on going, the one who would be affected would be the younger generation, so he did not insist. Yi Qian heaved a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that Grandpa would insist on going with them. If that happened, many things would be difficult to unfold. They were going to Martyrs Park in Southern Province, which was also the reason why they were going back. At around 4 in the afternoon, the sky in Southern Province had begun to darken. Winter days were short, and it was time for the sky to turn dark. When Sun Ying, who was driving, found out that Yi Qian would be coming to the Martyrs Park in the Southern Province, the gloominess she had been feeling for the past few days was swept away. There was a joyful smile on her face, and it was obvious that she was in a good mood. Heavy metal music was playing in the car. The rumbling sound made people feel dizzy. The sound of the subwoofer horn made people's hearts tremble. Sun Ying was not affected at all. Instead, she thought it was a kind of enjoyment. While driving, she swayed her body to the rhythm. After driving out of the Caesar Hotel, the car drove straight to the suburbs. After about an hour and a half, Sun Ying finally arrived at her destination. When she arrived at her destination, She sat in the car for a while and took a deep breath before getting out of the car. This was the place she didn't want to come to the most. If she could, she didn't want to come here for the rest of her life. But she had to come because Sun Dongqing was serving a 10-year sentence here. Sun Ying, who had just gotten out of the car, was no longer in a good mood. She was no longer as happy as she had been when she learned that Yi Qian was coming to the southern province tonight or tomorrow. She was so gloomy that even her face was covered with dark clouds. The visiting time was supposed to be 5:40 p.m. Now, it was only a few minutes away from 5:40 p.m. Sun Ying adjusted her expression and once again walked into this place she didn't want to come to at all. Sun Dongqing knew that her daughter was coming a few days ago. She had been waiting for this day for a long time. When the prison guard reported her number and escorted her out, the smile on Sun Dongqing's face didn't disappear even though she was much thinner. Chapter 34:26. Great. Her Ying had finally come to visit her. She wondered how her daughter was doing outside. With Ying's intelligence, she was sure that she was doing well. Moreover, she had left a large sum of money with her. With money and a house in her hands, her life should not be too bad. Sun Dongqing walked out of the prison with her hands and feet chained. Her face was beaming with joy. Even the prison uniform she was wearing couldn't hide her joy. Sun Ying's arrival had made her, who had endured the torment of being imprisoned for more than half a year, feel much better. At 5:40 p.m., the mother and daughter who had not seen each other for several months finally saw each other through the thick glass. The moment Sun Dongqing saw her daughter, she immediately rushed to the glass and was so excited that tears flowed down her cheeks. Ying, Mommy's precious daughter. This was Sun Ying's first visit to the prison. Sun Dongqing was so excited that she had forgotten the prison guard's instructions. It was not until the prison guard reminded her that she realized that her daughter could not hear her even if she was standing outside. As for Sun Ying, the moment she saw Sun Dongqing, her eyes were filled with tears. She did not say anything, but her tears flowed freely. When she picked up the phone, she was already sobbing. Mom, Ying is here to see you. Are you okay? The relationship between the mother and daughter was quite good. Sun Ying hated everyone around her, but she didn't blame Sun Dongqing. As a mother, Sun Dongqing did protect Sun Ying in every way and did her best to give Sun Ying the best she could. Unfortunately, she used the wrong method and caused Sun Ying to make mistakes again and again until there was no turning back. Hearing her daughter's desolate voice, Sun Dongqing felt that her heart was about to break. She wiped away the tears on her face and pretended that everything was fine. She squeezed out a smile and said, Mama's fine. Mama's fine. Don't worry about me. Mama's fine. But Ying, why did you lose so much weight? Did you suffer a lot? Are you having a hard time? Or did someone bully you? She asked one question after another. Every question was filled with the heart of a mother. She was only worried about her daughter. Sun Ying shook her head and replied with tears in her eyes, No, Mom. I'm not good at all. They bullied me and made fun of me. I was homesick, so I went back to the village to visit them. In the end, they chased me away. Mom, they chased me away. It was as if they had returned to the past. No matter what happened outside, as long as she didn't get what she wanted, Sun Ying would complain to Sun Dongqing, because she knew that her mother, who loved her, would definitely seek justice for her. But this time, Sun Dongqing was powerless. How could she, who had lost her freedom, seek justice for Sun Ying? What right did she have to seek justice for Sun Ying? Even if she could hear her heart twitching and bleeding, Sun Dongqing could only be locked in this square place, unable to go anywhere else. She could not seek justice for Sun Ying, so she could only grit her teeth and say, How dare they? That's your home. How dare they? Why wouldn't they dare? Mom, no one allowed me to return to the village. Even the village chief, Zhang Difu, didn't allow me to return to the village. They also said, Sun Ying cried until she was about to faint when she spoke of her grievances. Her lips were trembling. Sun Dongqing, who couldn't do anything to help, was almost pressed against the glass. She clenched the microphone tightly and gritted her teeth. Even Zhang Difu didn't allow you to return to the village? A bunch of ingrates, a bunch of ingrates. Your father helped them so much in the past, and now they don't even allow you to return to the village. Chapter 34:27. Sun Donqing was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her skinny face was full of hatred. She wanted to rush out and ask Zhang Difu if he still had a conscience. She was burning with anxiety, but Sun Ying didn't stop. Instead, she poured out her grievances and said in a miserable voice, "They won't let me go back to the village and said they want to sell our house. That aunt you also said that we're outsiders and have no right to live in Shuka village. She also said that the land we're building on originally belonged to them. Mom, they're so cruel that they want to sell our house." All the grievances, all the unwillingness, all because of the mother who protected her in every way, Sun Ying, as a daughter, began to pour out her grievances. She wanted to tell Sun Donqing how much she had suffered and how much she had suffered. She desperately needed to vent, to be comforted, to let people know that they had wronged her. And Sun Donqing became the only candidate. As for whether Sun Donqing would feel distressed, whether she would be affected, and whether she would be worried to the point of not being able to sleep at night, Sun Ying didn't care. How could Sun Donqing not feel distressed? How could she be at ease? How could she not be affected? When she heard that the whole village wanted to drive her daughter away, forbid her to return to the village, and even wanted to sell her house, Sun Donqing, who had some improvement in prison, suddenly reverted to the past. She was the rude Sun Donqing who was hated by the whole village whenever she heard that her daughter had been wronged. "Ain't you, this long-tongued woman? Bah, who does she think she is?" Sun Donqing, who still had a long string of curses in her mouth, was warned by the prison guard. The prison guard knocked on the wall with the stun baton in his hand and shouted, "Watch your words. If there's a next time, directly cut off the visitation." The words "cut off the visitation" made Sun Donqing shrink her shoulders involuntarily. She quickly admitted her mistake to the prison guard. After a few months in prison, Sun Donqing knew better than before to admit her mistakes. She didn't speak loudly anymore. She lowered her voice and said hatefully, "This land belongs to our family. They don't have the right to sell it. If we don't sell it, can they force us to sell it? If they really sell it, make a big fuss. Make a big fuss until everyone knows. It's best if you make a big fuss in town, the village, and the city. Make a fuss until Zhang Difu can't even keep his position as the village chief. At that time, we'll see who dares to sell our house." Sun Ying didn't care whether the house was sold or not. She didn't want to go back to that kind of place. Hearing this, Sun Donqing wiped her tears again. She knew that her daughter had been wronged and that these people had embarrassed her. But what else could she do? She didn't dare to move too much. She could only secretly pound her chest and hold the microphone tightly. She was anxious and angry. She was about to break down. Seeing this, she comforted Sun Donqing. "Mom, I'm fine. I don't want to go back to that place anyway. It's sold. At least Zhang Difu has some conscience. He said that he will sell the house to me. Mom, it's okay. Let him sell it. When we go abroad in the future, I'll buy you a villa with a big lawn in front and a big lawn in the back." Chapter 34:28. Sun Donqing, who was on the verge of breaking down, suddenly heard her daughter's tone change to light and quick. She even said that it would be better to sell the house and buy a villa abroad. For a moment, she couldn't keep up with her daughter's rhythm, so she choked on her breath until she started to hiccup. Inging, what do you mean? It would be better to sell the house. That's our home. Why do you want to, go abroad again? No, you can't go abroad. Go abroad? Absolutely not. It was because she had gone abroad that her daughter had suffered so much. It was because she had gone abroad that so many things had happened afterward. She had been in jail for so long. After being educated every day, she could not help but wonder if she had done something wrong. Did something wrong that led to all the things that had happened afterward? She thought about it again and again. She really thought of it. That's right, she went abroad. If she did not go abroad, That be asterisk TCH Ichien would not have had the chance to make that videotape. Without that videotape, Mrs. Lee would not have suddenly abandoned her daughter. Without that videotape, she would not have divorced Yi Jifan. Without the divorce, she would not have reported her husband because of Yi Jifan's heartlessness. Everything was caused by going abroad. Now, whenever she heard the word go abroad, she would be afraid. You can't go abroad because, it's because of going abroad. It's because of you. Ying, listen to me. Let's not go abroad. No. Let's not go abroad. Sun Dongqing knew that her daughter was an opinionated person and would not change her mind easily. The more anxious she was, the harder it was for her to speak properly, and the more she hiccuped. When Sun Ying heard this, her pair of pretty eyes instantly darkened. She gritted her teeth and said, "Mom, wait until I do something big, then I can go abroad. When that time comes, I will definitely bring you abroad in a grand manner. What's so good about this place? There's only a way out if you go abroad. I've already thought about my future. Don't worry, Mom. I know what to do. Just wait for me." Sun Dongqing was even more worried after hearing her words. She cried and begged, "Ying, we won't go abroad. It's because, going abroad hurt you. If it wasn't for that videotape." Shut up. Mom, don't you dare mention the videotape again. Also, it wasn't going abroad that harmed me. It was that B asterisk TCH Yi Qian who harmed me. If she hadn't harmed me, I would have become the young madam of the Li family. I married into the Li family long ago and became the young madam of a prestigious family that everyone envies. It's Yi Qian, that bitch. She ruined my life. Sun Ying spoke viciously. She knew that she couldn't speak loudly, so she kept her voice down and spoke word by word. Every word was filled with venom. "All right, Mom. I'm leaving now. Take care of yourself. I'll come and see you again after some time." Seeing that there was something wrong with her daughter, Sun Dongqing became anxious. Especially when she saw that her daughter was about to hang up the phone, Sun Dongqing stood up and hurriedly asked, "Ying, what are you trying to do? Don't do anything stupid. You hear me? Yi Qian has let us down, but you can't do anything stupid for her. Do you hear me?" She was so scared that she didn't even hiccup anymore. She was afraid that Sun Ying wouldn't listen to her advice, so she quickly spoke. She had an ominous feeling that something big was going to happen to her daughter. Chapter 34:29. Sun Ying did not notice Sun Dongqing's anxiousness. She hung up the phone and smiled at Sun Dongqing, who was burning with anxiety. Then, she slowly leaned against the glass and said a few words that made Sun Dongqing's face turn extremely pale. "Mom, someone will help me kill Yi Qian." Sun Dongqing understood from her daughter's lips. Her daughter said that someone would help her kill Yi Qian. Clang! The microphone slipped from her hand and smashed onto the marble table. Sun Dongqing's eyes were fixed on Sun Ying's back as she turned around and left. As Sun Ying's back gradually walked away, her body suddenly started to twitch uncontrollably. Her legs were trembling so much that they lost all their strength. Her whole body fell limply to the ground. Ying said that someone would help her kill Yi Qian. How is that possible? How is it possible that someone would help her kill someone? Impossible, impossible. She had heard too many of such things in prison. There were people who helped to kill people, but it was usually out of a moment of loyalty, or they would help to kill people for money and money. Now, even the villagers did not want Ying to go back. How is it possible that someone would help her kill someone? It was impossible that someone would help her kill someone, unless the person who helped Ying had other motives, such as the money in Ying's hands. The money she left for Ying was not a small amount. It was at least a few $100,000. There was also the gold jewelry that Yi Zhixiang gave her years ago and the gold jewelry that she bought herself. Added together, it was a huge sum. And in that jade pendant, the most valuable thing was that jade pendant. Yi Zhifan said that the jade pendant could be sold for tens of millions. What did tens of millions mean? It was so much money that Ying might not even be able to spend it all in her next life. The more Sun Dongqing thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that someone was after Sun Ying's money. Come back, Ying, come back. Someone is trying to harm you. Come back and listen to Mom. Don't do anything stupid. That bastard Yi Qian can't be killed so easily. Even Yi Jifan didn't succeed back then. So how can you succeed? Come back quickly. Mommy is begging you. Come back quickly. Come back quickly. At this moment, she, who was lying on the ground, was very clear in her mind and heart, but she couldn't speak. Her limbs were stiff, and she couldn't move. When the prison guard saw the situation, he immediately went forward to check and informed his colleagues outside to come over. Sun Dongxing wanted to grab the prison guard and asked them to pull Sunning back, but she could not speak. Other than her brain and heart, her body was so stiff that no matter how hard she tried, she did not have the energy to speak, much less stand up. Sun Ying didn't look back. She didn't know that on the other side of the thick glass, Sun Dongxing had fallen to the ground because she was worried about her. After venting all the grievances in her heart and sharing her biggest secret with her mother, Sun Ying's mood suddenly brightened up. Her footsteps were light as she walked out of the prison that had once trapped her and left a stain on her life. At this moment, Sun Ying still didn't know that it was her selfishness that had caused Sun Dongxing's panic. At around midnight, Yi Qian arrived in the southern province. His journey from the capital to the southern province was not leaked. Sun Ying, who had been waiting for news, waited until the next day to hear from Yi Qian. The big boss has already given you the opportunity. Whether or not you succeed will depend on your ability, the man in the car said indifferently. At the same time, he took out an assembled pistol from the car. There are 5 bullets left. Be careful. Chapter 34:30. The person who met Sun Ying was the Asian man they had targeted. It took them a lot of effort to identify him as their main target. They always thought that people like him were just following orders. However, when they investigated further, they realized that this person was not simple. He was much more complicated than the mastermind they needed to capture. Therefore, as soon as Sun Ying made a move, this person would be a target they needed to capture immediately. In the dark, there was suddenly a beep sound of the door being unlocked. Then, they saw a drunk man walking over unsteadily. He was protected by 2 bartenders, one on his left and one on his right. The 2 people who were talking in the car immediately stopped talking and looked at the drunk man walking over vigilantly. Sun Ying quickly put the gun in her hand into her handbag. She didn't need the middle-aged Asian man to remind her. This was the most famous red light district in the southern province. The bar they were in was run by Li Chuhai. The basement of the bar was not a place where ordinary cars could drive in. Only the bar's VIP customers and extremely wealthy customers were allowed to park their cars in the basement. Sir, please watch your step. The bartenders who followed closely behind didn't directly help the drunk man. Instead, they carefully protected him and reminded him. They didn't touch him physically. Some customers didn't like to be touched, and this drunk man was one of those customers who didn't like to be touched. He took out a bag from the car and staggered out. He even forgot to close the door. The bartenders who took care of him closed the door for him. He was indeed drunk. He was so drunk that he forgot to close the door. He was so drunk that he couldn't even tell which direction the elevator was in. He staggered all the way. It was obvious that he was a drunk man. The middle-aged Asian man waited until the 3 of them entered the elevator again before he said to Sun Ying, "She won't stay for long. If you want to deal with her, you have to hurry." "I know." Sun Ying nodded. Her eyes were shining with excitement. She asked again, "Boss, have you arranged everything for me? You just have to deal with your problem. You don't have to worry about anything else." She didn't want to care, but it was related to whether she could leave the country safely. She had to ask. Perhaps it was because she could deal with Yi Qian immediately and leave alone. Sun Ying asked the question that had been on her mind. Why did Boss help me get rid of Yi Qian? Is there a grudge between Boss and Yi Qian? Otherwise, why would he help her? It was unknown if Sun Dongxing's prayer had touched the heavens, but Sun Ying actually asked such a question. The middle-aged Asian man couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. Even I don't have a right to ask about the big boss's matters. Sun Ying, do you think you have the right to ask about it? Chapter 34:31. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The more you know, the worse your end will be. Keep your mouth shut and mind your own business. If you ask too much, you'll anger the big boss. Sunning, you should know what the big boss is capable of. He only needs to lift a finger, and you'll wish you were dead. The middle-aged Asian man didn't stay for long. Half warning and half threat, he got out of the car, leaving Sunning, who was so frightened that her back was drenched in cold sweat. She sat in the car, not daring to move for a long time. Wish you were dead. Wasn't that a living hell? Thinking back to the days when she had just been thrown into the red light district, Sun-Ing realized that she had underestimated the world. She used to think that she was great. She had a father who was a government official, a mother who was protective of her, and so many people who flattered her. She thought that she was great and that everyone should give in to her and flatter her. Only when she got there did she realize that in the eyes of the truly rich and powerful, she was just an ant that couldn't be any smaller. They wouldn't even bother to strangle her to death. At this moment, even though the middle-aged Asian man had already gotten out of the car, Sun Ying's face was still pale, and cold sweat kept breaking out on her back. Just now, she had been too complacent. If she had angered the big boss, her end wouldn't have been just death. She would have been in a living hell. This wasn't just for show. After a while, Sun Ying started the car and left only when she could feel her hands and feet. She was scared. She was really scared. She just needed to take care of herself and do her job well. As for the grudge between the big boss and that be *TCH Yi Qian, she didn't need to know. Anyway, Sun-Ing stepped on the accelerator and rushed out of the underground garage with a roar. She smiled coldly. Yi Qian wouldn't be able to live for more than a few days anyway. Why should she worry about him? She drove away. The middle-aged Asian man, who had returned to his car, was still sitting quietly. He didn't take out his phone until he couldn't hear the roar of the car in front anymore. In the dark car, the phone screen flashed with a faint blue light. His fingers moved, and a cell phone number was dialed. Soon, the Asian man's respectful voice came from the quiet car. I've told her everything according to your instructions. Whether she can do it or not depends on how capable she is. If she doesn't succeed, it'll let us know how capable the cadets under Sniper King are. Boss, you're in a hurry to push Sunning out. If you don't do it well, I'm afraid it will arouse suspicion. The Asian man's reminder made the person on the other end of the phone fall silent for a moment. Then, the person on the other end of the phone said something, and a faint smile appeared on the Asian man's face. You're right. We've cleaned up everything here. Sun-Ing had the motive to kill Yi Qian, so it really has nothing to do with us. Whether or not the matter succeeds will depend on these few days. If we succeed, we'll get rid of Small Fry. If we fail, Sunning will be dealt with instead. We'll also know what Yi Qian is capable of. We'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Don't worry, I'll take care of things here. I won't leave any traces behind. After the Asian man finished speaking, he nodded and hung up the phone. He put the phone back into his pocket, started the car, and left the underground parking lot of the bar with a gloomy look. Not long after he left, there was the sound of shallow breathing in the dark garage. It seemed like someone had been hiding in the dark. 2 minutes later, the drunkard who had appeared in the parking lot earlier came back again. This time, he started the car and drove out of the basement while humming a tuneless tune. Chapter 34-32. It was already midnight. Countless people had entered Dreamland, and countless people were still active. Li Chuhai, who was far away in the capital, was swirling the goblet in his hand. The red liquid in the goblet swayed gently, and Li Chuhai's cold smile could be seen on the surface of the goblet. Someone walked over with swaying steps. She raised a pair of hands that were as smooth as cream and lazily wrapped them around Li Chuhai's waist from behind. She said coquettishly, "Why aren't you sleeping yet? Are you suffering from insomnia again?" As she spoke, her exquisite body also leaned over, firmly sticking to the man's strong back. The hands around his waist also began to wander, slowly moving downwards. Her breath smelled like orchids as she spoke like an adult. "Since you're suffering from insomnia, why don't we do it again? Who knows? You might be able to sleep when you're tired." Hearing this, Li Chuhai sneered. He turned around and suddenly grabbed the woman's soft, straight hair with one hand and pulled it back, forcing the woman to raise her head to look at him. Perhaps because he used too much strength, the woman's delicate face twisted. She was afraid of offending Li Chuhai, so she had to force a smile. She didn't forget to act coquettishly. "What's wrong, Master Hai? Is it because I didn't serve you well enough and made you unhappy? It seems like I was being lenient just now, so you dare to tease me," Li Chuhai said with a smile that wasn't a smile. His eyes flashed with a ruthlessness that frightened the woman. She was so scared that her shoulders couldn't help but shrink back a little. In exchange, Li Chuhai's gaze became even colder. "Don't try to be smart. I told you to sleep alone, so obediently sleep alone. Did you really think that I didn't know that you were eavesdropping?" The hand that grabbed the woman's hair pulled back forcefully. The woman, who was forcing a smile, screamed in pain from her scalp. Then, something cold and hard was stuffed into her mouth. Before she could react, the cold wine poured into her mouth. It was fierce and hurried, without the slightest bit of pity for the fair sex. She didn't dare to say anything. Even if she choked and had tears in her eyes, she had to endure it and force the red wine into her mouth. Everyone said that Uncle Hai was not easy to please. She had thought that those sisters said the grapes were sour because they could not eat grapes. Now that she had tried him, she realized that this Uncle Hai, who looked very gentlemanly, was indeed not easy to please. He could change his face without any warning. With a cold expression, Li Chuhai poured half a glass of red wine into the woman's mouth. Even though the woman was trembling with fear, he didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy. He loosened his hand and stuffed the wine glass into the woman's hand. He coldly spat out the word, "Get lost." He didn't even bother to look at the woman who was crawling and rolling. He turned around and continued to look out of the window. It would be daybreak soon. Whether it was a dragon or a worm, they would only know in these 2 days. As a father, he was disappointed. Now it was up to his daughter. The sky gradually brightened. As predicted by the weather forecast, snow began to fall in the southern province at around 4 in the morning. By 6 in the morning, a thick layer of snow had accumulated on the ground. Sun Ying, who was sitting in the car, glanced at the entrance of the small hotel and sneered contemptuously. She had thought that she was living a glamorous life, but in the end, after returning to the southern province, she was staying in a small hotel that did not even have a business license. Looking at the time again, a trace of impatience flashed across Sun Ying's eyes. Didn't she say she was going to Martyrs Park? She still hadn't left at 6 in the morning. As time passed, the cold streets began to bustle with noise and excitement. By 8 in the morning, the doors of the streets opened and the festive New Year song was played. Congratulations, 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 congratulations. The bright snow melted, the plum blossoms sprouted, and the flowers slowly became lively. The Wan City accent spread throughout the streets in an instant, but Sun Ying only felt that it was ear-piercing. Chapter 34-33. This was the southern province's agricultural pedestrian street, a popular place for the common folk. There was food, clothing, and everything was cheap. It was lively and open for business on the 4th day of the new year. Yi Qian was staying in a small hotel on this pedestrian street. Xia Jinyuan had asked her to stay at Caesar Hotel, but she was unwilling. What did Sun Ying like to see? She liked to see her down and out. She liked to see her unhappy life. Then, she would satisfy Sun Ying's dark desires. Sun Ying had waited from 5 in the morning until 8 in the morning. Just as she was about to lose her patience, she finally saw Yi Qian walk out of the small hotel. He was wearing a thick black coat, a pair of tight black pants, and a pair of white sneakers. His steps looked heavy as he walked slowly towards a bus stop. On the 5th day of the new year, most of the streets were deserted, especially the areas where migrant workers lived. It was so quiet that there was no sign of life. However, the street Yi Qian lived on was different. On the 1st day of the new year, it was bustling with activity. Many wholesale stores had set up gifts for New Year's greetings. People came and went. Yi Qian walked slowly into the crowd after coming out of the hotel. His hands were in the pockets of his long black coat, and his delicate chin was buried in his scarf. He walked slowly by himself, as if he was completely isolated from the hustle and bustle around him. Sun Ying, who was sitting in the car, was so angry that she clenched her teeth. She only came out at 8. She couldn't do anything now. Sun Ying wanted to shoot Yi Qian as soon as she saw him, but she knew that she couldn't do it now. It seemed like she had to wait at Martyrs Park. She didn't know if she would go to Martyrs Park today. If she didn't go, wouldn't she have wasted another day waiting there? After thinking about it, Sun Ying decided to start the car. She planned to slowly follow Yi Qian and shoot as soon as she had the chance. Yi Qian, who had walked out of the hotel, already knew that Sun Ying was watching him from outside. He also knew that Sun Ying was looking for an opportunity to take out her gun and shoot him. She didn't expect that Sun Ying was taken to the underground market overseas for training. The mastermind, Li Chuhai, really thought highly of her. In order to test her, he spent a lot of effort to train Sun Ying. She also wanted to know if Sun Ying, who had been specially trained, had any skills. Yi Qian walked to the bus stop and quickly got on the bus. When Sun Ying saw this, her face twisted again. Yi Qian did not plan to go to Martyrs Park. Instead, he took the bus to Provincial First High School. The Provincial First High School was also a place that Sun Ying did not want to recall. It had also given her too much embarrassment. It could even be said that all the misfortune had started from the Provincial First High School. With a twisted expression, Sun Ying stepped on the accelerator and followed the bus closely. She wanted to see what she was going to do at the Provincial First High School. Xia Jinyuan, who was the last to get on the bus, squeezed to Yi Qian's side and said in a voice that only Yi Qian could hear, "I'm following her. When are you going to stop teasing her?" "I'm not teasing her. Originally, I planned to visit my mother and Uncle Jen today. Now that my classmates have agreed to go to the Provincial First High School together, I can't be absent. But Captain Xia, what are you going to do if you follow her all the way to the Provincial First High School?" As the bus shook, Yi Qian's low voice drifted into Xia Jinyuan's ears. "You can't pretend to be a student from the same batch. Captain Xia, what are you going to do?" Chapter 34-34. There was a raised platform at the back of the bus. Yi Qian stood at the top of the raised platform, while Xia Jinyuan stood at the bottom. Their heights were about the same. Yi Qian spoke in a low voice. His shallow breaths brushed past Xia Jinyuan's ear like a feather brushing against his heart. It was soft and slightly ticklish. Xia Jinyuan looked up slightly and smiled at the sly girl. His deep eyes were full of affection. "I don't plan to do anything. I'll just follow you." "How can that be? Sun Ying will definitely recognize you. Don't forget that she has seen you before." Yi Qian instinctively shook his head, disagreeing with his decision to follow her. Sun Ying had seen Captain Xia before in the classroom. At that time, he was still in his military uniform. Since Sun Ying had received training in the underground market, she would naturally be more vigilant than the average person. If she sensed that something was wrong, it would be troublesome. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but smile. "If you can't let me follow you, then what do you think we should do? You can't leave my sight, and you can't let me pretend to be your classmate. What else do you think we should do? We'll walk around the school first. It's okay if you don't follow us inside. No matter how much Sun Ying hates me, she won't dare to do anything in school. Besides, I have so many classmates around me. She won't dare to do anything. If you're really worried, you can actually wait for me outside. Or maybe you can find a place to rest and wait for my call. How about that?" As soon as she finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but narrow his eyes. His little fox was deliberately trying to send him away. His thin lips curled into a slight smile. His tall and broad body leaned back as the bus braked. Yi Qian was still afraid that he would fall, so he instinctively raised his hand and used his elbow to support his back. Then he heard the man's soft voice. "You want to send me away? That won't do. The higher-ups have instructed me to protect you. You can't send me away." Yi Qian's intention was immediately seen through. Yi Qian couldn't help but purse his lips. His dark eyes were filled with helplessness. "That person definitely knows you. I'm afraid of causing you unnecessary trouble. Just like Principal Chun, because his identity was exposed, he could be killed at any time. Captain Xia's identity was special. Once Li Chuhai found out, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. She was even more worried worried that he would fake his death and retire in order to cover his identity as Principal Chen. This was what she was worried about. She had been worried about it ever since she knew that he was secretly protecting her. If that person really knows, he won't be able to spread the news. It's just like how he can't send the news overseas, even though he knows Headmaster Chen's identity. Now that he knows my identity, the higher-ups will not let him leave the country alive. Compared to Yi Jian's worries, Xia Jinyuan, who had been living on the edge of a knife, was not worried about his identity being exposed at all. The military and national defense would not allow such a thing to happen. Yi Qian wasn't as optimistic as him. Nothing was absolute. How could he guarantee that his identity wouldn't be exposed? The best way to prevent his identity from being exposed was to make sure that no one knew of Captain Xia's identity. "Captain Xia, I'm very worried," she said softly. Her voice was tense and uneasy. "I'm really, really worried." As the passengers got on and off the bus, some people stood close to the two of them. Yi Qian pursed his lips and didn't continue speaking. Her hanging hand was suddenly grabbed, and a familiar touch made Yi Jian lower her head to look at her hand. The darkness in her eyes deepened. Chapter 34-35. She hoped that the owner of this hand would always be by her side. She didn't want anything to happen to him, and she didn't want him to be in danger because of her. She only hoped that the owner of this hand would be safe and would always be by her side. She wrote on the palm of his hand, writing the word "don't worry" stroke by stroke. He told her not to worry, but could she really be at ease? Yi Qian couldn't help but sigh softly. She turned her hand and held the big hand that gave her warmth. She held it tightly, as if this was the only way to make her feel at ease. The bus traveled for about 40 minutes and arrived at the bus stop of the provincial first high school. Yi Qian got off the bus with a few other passengers. Before she looked up, she heard several cheers. Yi Qian, over here, over here. You really took the bus. And Jessen, you're amazing. Already said that you guys were bound to lose. Now you're convinced. Who in our class knows Yi Qian the best? It's definitely Jessen. You must accept defeat if you're willing to bet. The laughter of boys and girls intertwined. Yi Qian, who had jumped off the bus, looked up and saw several high school classmates standing by the bus stop. She clearly didn't see any of her classmates standing by the bus stop. So why did they suddenly appear? Another classmate walked out from behind the billboard behind the bus stop. It was none other than Jiasen, who knew Yi Qian the best in class. "Ha ha, my little Jane Eyre is here. I told you that she would definitely take the bus here. What do you think? I won, right?" And Jiasen's laughter sounded triumphant, instantly suppressing the voices of the other classmates. Come. You must accept defeat if you're willing to bet. Pay up, pay up." As she spoke, she had already walked briskly to Yi Qian's side. She opened her arms and gave Yi Qian, who was about to greet the other classmates, a big hug. "I received your text last night at around 1 o'clock in the morning telling me that you would be coming today. I immediately sent the message to my classmates. When I logged in this morning, it was full of beeps. A few classmates who didn't plan to come rushed over when they heard that you would be coming." Yi Qian only found out about the class gathering after she got off the plane when she checked her phone. Her classmates had discussed it for a long time before deciding to set the gathering on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. However, she didn't go online, so she didn't know until she received Jiasen's message. How could Jiasen not understand Yi Qian? Girls were afraid of the cold, but Yi Qian, who was also a girl, was definitely not afraid of the cold. The last time she went to look for her, her cadets were still training on such a cold day. How could she be afraid of the cold? Besides, with Yi Qian's frugality, she would never take a taxi if she could get a ride. The moment Yi Qian jumped off the bus, and Jiasen took the money from the two boys with a smile. Now, she stuffed half of the money into Yi Qian's hands. Come. Let's split it equally. Ha ha. They said that since it's so cold, you must have taken a taxi like us. Ha ha. How could that be? No matter how cold it is, you would take a car here. How could you take a taxi? Ha ha. It's the Lunar New Year. Everyone gets 50 yuan. I won 500 yuan. Chapter 34-36. Yi Qian returned the bet to Jiasin and smiled. You're bullying an honest person. You knew that I didn't know how to hail a taxi. You were the one who suggested the bet, right? That's right. As soon as I said that you would definitely take a taxi and just wait for me at the school gate, and Jiasin immediately said that she wanted to bet with me. So, I was fooled and bet with her. The boy who inexplicably bet with her spread his hands, indicating that he was also very helpless. I was just having fun and guessed that you would hail a taxi. Who knew that you really didn't? There are 8 girls in our class. Other than those who drove their own cars, the rest all hailed taxis. You're the only exception. Of course you're an exception. If you weren't an exception, you wouldn't be Yi Qian. Yi Qian, we boys won't bet with Jiasin anymore. She's the one who knows you best in class. We're willing to admit defeat. Yi Qian was loved and respected by her classmates in high school. Even after graduating a year and a half ago, her classmates were still the same as before. They still revolved around Yi Qian and chatted happily as they walked towards the school gate. They had agreed to meet at the school gate at 9 o'clock. At this time, all her classmates had already arrived. There were also a few parents among them. They were waiting for Yi Qian with their daughters. These parents were none other than the parents of the girls who had shared a dormitory with Yi Qian in high school. They were the fathers of Yang Yi, Lu Lizhen, Li Qian, Zhang Yueyin, and Jiasin. When they found out that Yi Qian would be attending the class reunion, they specially rushed over early in the morning to thank Yi Qian in person for helping their daughters. If it wasn't for her, their daughters wouldn't have been able to attend university. When Yi Qian walked over, the girls in the dormitory excitedly said to their parents, "Dad, Mom, look, Yi Qian is here." The one in the middle is Yi Qian. Yi Qian, that's my dormitory classmate, Yi Qian. Dad, Mom, you finally got what you wanted today. I'm coming. Dad, Mom, do you see? The girl in the middle is Yi Qian. Zhang Yueyin held her parents' hands and said happily, that tall, pretty, short-haired girl who walks so elegantly. She's my classmate, Yi Qian. I see her. I really have to thank her. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to get into a good university. Mrs. Zhang tiptoed to look ahead, and Yi Qian. One glance was all it took to know which one of the children was Yi Qian. There was no other reason than Yi Qian's temperament was recognizable at a glance. Her back was straighter than the other students, and she walked with a strong aura. In addition, all the girls had shoulder-length hair, and she was the only one with short hair. How could she not recognize her? To recognize. Yi. Yeah, it's different. It's really different. Her spirit is different. I can recognize her at a glance. I don't even need Yang Yi to tell me. Father Yang sighed. She's different. I can tell at a glance. Yeah, it's all thanks to her. Otherwise, with Yueyin's grades, I'd be thanking the heavens if she could get into a second-tier university. Father Zhang sighed. He and Father Yang looked at each other. They both felt that other people's children were so good. Father was a geologist. He had always known of Yi Qian's name, but he had never seen her before. Now that he saw Yi Qian, he didn't even need Jiasin to introduce her. Like the other fathers, he recognized Yi Qian at a glance. Chapter 34-37. Father looked at his daughter, who was practically hanging on to Yi Qian, but Yi Qian still allowed her to do whatever she wanted. Father couldn't help rubbing his forehead. The short-haired girl whose arm was being held by his careless daughter was definitely Yi Qian. Only this child could tolerate Jiasin's bad temper. He turned to Li Qian's father and said, "This child's temper is really good. Look at my girl. She's hanging onto Yi Qian. As her father, I don't like the sight of her. But Yi Qian can tolerate it. Her temper is too good." Li Qian, who was accompanying her parents, smiled delicately and said, "Uncle, you're right. Our Yi Qian's temper is really, really good. No matter what we do wrong, she won't be angry. She will tell us what we did wrong and what we need to change. She has the best temper I've ever seen." The current Li Qian wasn't as fat as she was in high school. Although her height hadn't changed much, because she had slimmed down, her figure appeared tall and slender. She no longer had her previous inferiority complex and had become exceptionally generous and decent. She had been playing piano since primary school. In the past, she was so fat that she felt inferior and didn't show her temperament. Now that she had slimmed down, her temperament naturally showed. The change was shocking. When she appeared in front of her classmates just now, several boys' eyes flashed with obvious surprise. This was also the change Ichien had brought to her. Knowing that she felt inferior because of her weight, he made her wake up early every morning in high school to run. Until now, Li Qian still insisted on running. Mr. and Mrs. Li saw their daughters change bit by bit. Seeing their daughter walk out of her inferiority complex and become as beautiful as a flower now, the person they were most grateful to was Yi Qian. Hearing this, Mr. Li smiled and said, Yi Qian not only has a good temper, but she's also rarely generous. She doesn't hide anything and treats people with sincerity and makes friends. Until now, I still often ask Li Qian if she has contacted her and say that such a friend is worth spending a lifetime to make. It's too rare. Mother Li said, even biological sisters are only SOSO. My Li Qian was brought up by her. Back then, I was so worried about Li Qian's inferiority complex that I didn't know how much white hair I had. I even asked a psychiatrist. Later on, with the help of Yi Qian, I thank the heavens. Thank you, Li Qian, for meeting such a good classmate. Later on, the Yao family wanted to stir up some trouble. When I heard about this, I immediately contacted you guys. We can't let the Yao family harm people anymore. Mrs. Li said that the Yao family wanted to get Yao Jing out. Somehow, Mrs. Li got wind of it and contacted Mr. Li, Mr. Zhang, and Mr. Liu to use their connections in the southern province to suppress the matter. Apart from the Yin family, which was not rich, the rest of the families had a say in the southern province. With their connections, how could the declining Yao family make a comeback? Don't mention this to Yi Qian, lest she feels uneasy. Mr. Li reminded his wife and said to Li Qian, you too. Don't mention it to Yi Qian, understand? Li Qian wouldn't mention it. Back then, Yao Jing wanted to push Yi Qian off the rooftop of the teaching block. How could such a vicious person be let out to continue doing evil? She nodded, indicating that she wouldn't mention such a terrible thing. Mr. Liu also said, this matter has already passed. Little Yi probably doesn't know about this. We could just pretend not to know. With everyone's agreement, if they didn't say anything, Yi Qian wouldn't know. Chapter 34-38. By this time, Yi Qian had already found out from Jiasin that her roommate's parents had specially come over. She looked at Jiasin, who was hanging her entire body weight onto her to prevent her from escaping, and said helplessly, I won't run away. Uncles and aunties all know that I will be here. It would be rude of me to run away now. You don't have to keep hanging on to me. It's hard to walk. It's not hard at all. I'm very light. I don't even weigh 100 kilograms. And Jiasin was 163 meters tall and weighed less than 100 kilograms. She was considered to be on the skinny side. In order to prevent Yi Qian from escaping, she planned to keep her entire body weight on Yi Qian until she saw the adults. There was a car parked across the road. Sun Ying, who did not dare to show her face, sat in the car. She saw Yi Qian being surrounded by her classmates. She saw all her classmates surrounding Yi Qian, and even the parents shaking hands and giving her red packets for the new year. Their expressions of gratitude made Sun Ying so jealous that her entire face contorted. A bunch of despicable people who only know how to act according to the wind. If they had not made fun of her behind her back that year, how could she have left the provincial first high school in such a pathetic state? And the faces of those family members were so disgusting. Did they really think that Yi Qian was helping their daughter? Bah, she was helping herself. She had just transferred to this school in her second year of high school. If she did not perform well in class, would her classmates accept her? Would they help her? No. Therefore, she had to perform well in every aspect. In the end, she had to use her classmates to successfully push her out of the provincial first high school. Sun Ying watched as her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The jealousy in her eyes burned like fire. It burned her face beyond recognition and made her extremely ugly. The adults did not stay for too long. They knew that the longer they stayed, the more uncomfortable the children would feel. In order not to dampen their spirits, each of them said a few words to Yi Qian and tried their best to invite Yi Qian to visit their home after the gathering. Under the urging of their daughters, they took the red packets that they could not give him and drove away. Yi Qian was shocked by the adults' enthusiasm. Fortunately, she had gone to Family Xia 2 days ago and had the experience of interacting with the elders. This time, she greeted her classmates' parents, uncles, and aunts. She also wished them a happy new year and chatted with them for a while. Until the adults left, she finally let out a sigh of relief. She was still not used to interacting with people's enthusiasm. She was at a loss and did not know what to say. When the students saw her relieved expression, they all laughed out loud. They didn't stay at the school gate any longer. They had already greeted the school guards and returned to the campus once again, walking the same path they had taken before. This is my first time returning to school after graduation. I didn't expect our school to be so beautiful. It's not any worse than my university. I haven't been back either. In the past, I only wanted to leave. Now that I've left, I want to come back. I miss my high school life. I even miss the dark days of high school. Every time I pass by this place on my way home, I can't help but look out the window at the school gate. In the past, whenever there was a break, it was as if I was released from prison. Now, haha. Fortunately, I didn't drop out of school. Otherwise, I would regret it for the rest of my life. The road from the teaching building to the cafeteria will always be my favorite. The road from the dormitory to the teaching building will always be my most hated. Love and hate intertwined. I can't stop. Walking into the school, the students who had too many memories were already chatting. This was a gathering for the entire class of grade 12. After that, there had never been a gathering where everyone was present. Chapter 34-39. Xia Jinyuan watched as Yi Qian walked into the school compound. The smile in his eyes never faded. He retracted his gaze and glanced at Sun Ying, who had been standing by the side of the road without showing her face. His warm smile instantly turned into a cold smile. There was a cold glint in his eyes. She was like a rat crossing the street. Did she think she could go further? That day, Yi Qian stayed with his classmates. They had lunch together, went to the park to play in the afternoon, and booked a KTV room in the evening. She didn't know how to sing or dance, so she could only watch her classmates sing and dance. She swayed her body slightly to the rhythm, but she didn't know how to do anything else. And Jiasin mercilessly mocked her. Sun Ying, who had been following them closely, was angry for the entire day. She sat in the car, hungry and tired, and kept panting. She kept tormenting herself in the car. From morning to night, in order to keep up with Yi Qian, Sun Ying didn't dare to take half a step away. She was afraid that if she left in the middle, Yi Qian, who she had been following so closely, would suddenly disappear and she would fall behind again. Now that Yi Qian and his classmates had entered the KTV, Sun Ying bought herself a bottle of mineral water and a piece of bread. She filled her stomach and vented her anger at the same time. It wasn't until she received a call from an Asian man asking her how things were going that Big Boss had been waiting to hear from her all day. When Sun Ying heard the words Big Boss, it was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her. It instantly cooled her down and made all her resentment, anger, and resentment disappear in an instant. It was this phone call that calmed Sun Ying down. She was no longer envious of Yi Qian being welcomed by all her classmates. At 11 o'clock p.m., Yi Qian and his classmates finally walked out of the KTV. The bar was still very lively, even though it was the new year. Taxis came and went one after another in front of the KTV. The boys were all very gentlemanly, sending the girls off first before leaving in their own cars. After getting into the car, Yi Qian and Jiasin texted each other and agreed to meet up tomorrow afternoon. Xia Jinyuan's message also came. Yi Jian opened it and read it. He smiled and replied, "I've already seen it. I'm afraid she's furious today. It's very likely that she'll choose to take action tonight. How's the situation there? Keep a close eye on the target. After you succeed, the other side will act immediately. All right, I can deal with her. You can't show up unless you have no other choice. All right, I'll be careful. Don't worry about me. Looking at his latest message, Yi Qian's gaze softened. He was afraid that she would be distracted, and she was afraid that he would worry. You care about me, and I care about you. This feeling of being deeply cared about could make even the coldest winter feel exceptionally warm. The car drove into the farmer's market. Yi Qian did not ask the taxi driver to drive forward. Instead, he pointed at a spot for the driver to stop. The driver looked outside and smiled at the young girl. Your family lives here? Not bad. This place is not bad. Your family must have bought a few houses after the government demolished them. Also, it seems like an international hotel is going to be built here. Is it true that the residents in this area can get annual dividends from the international hotel? Yi Qian, who was counting money, looked at the old place that was going to be demolished soon. He smiled and said calmly, I'm not sure. I'm not a resident here. The driver still did not believe him. He said, the people here are going to be rich, before driving away. After getting out of the car, Yi Qian put his hands in his pockets and looked around. A hotel was indeed going to be built here. She did not know if the residents here would be rich or not. She only knew that this was the place where she lost her life in her previous life. Chapter 3440. After going around in circles, she was back here again. She was back to this place that she didn't want to go near during her 2 years of studying in the southern province. She was back to this place that she didn't want to remember, but she always dreamed of. Captain Xia said that she wanted to send him away, and it was true. She didn't want him to show up because of his identity, but she also had her own selfish motives. She didn't want him to step into this place where she stayed in her previous life. It was as if he had also been here in his previous life and seen her cowardly self. In fact, she didn't want him to see her cowardly self at all. She lived too cowardly in her previous life. Sometimes, when she thought of her previous life and looked at Captain Xia, who was as dazzling as the sun, she felt inexplicably ashamed. She was so cowardly in her previous life. In her previous life, Captain Xia must have been like this life, still as dazzling as the sun, with a faintly discernible smile at the corner of his mouth. He would inadvertently help others, and he would also inadvertently punish bad people. He was the salvation of many people, but also the despair of many people. In her previous life, she didn't meet him. She was so cowardly that she hid from place to place like a stray dog without a place to stay. In the end, she even used such a method to perish together with the thing that humiliated her. She was so unbearable. Even if it was in her previous life, she couldn't get over it every time she thought about it in this life. Back then, Principal Chow said that as long as she was willing to go to the provincial first high school, he would definitely let her enter the provincial first high school smoothly. That year, she refused. Firstly, she didn't want to be far away from Uncle Jin and Principal Chun. Secondly, she wasn't strong enough to live in the southern province. It wasn't until a year later that her state of mind became stronger and she became braver and braver. In the end, she came to the provincial first high school to study without any grudges. She studied there for 2 years, and she had never been to the farmer's market that would soon become the new century's commercial pedestrian street. Yi Qian raised her head and looked at the buildings that had not yet been demolished. She laughed self-deprecatingly. Forgive her cowardice. She didn't want Captain Xia to know anything about her previous life. She wanted to treat her miserable past as a dream. Tonight, she would wake up from the dream and never again. He would end where he started. After tonight, he would be reborn. Yi Jian's phone vibrated with a buzzing sound. She did not take her phone out of her pocket. It seemed that the caller was not many people who knew her phone number. It was either her classmates who had arrived safely, or it was Captain Xia. He had been wearing his earpiece all this time, so he blindly pressed the answer button in his pocket. A man's deep and calm voice came from the speaker. Sun Ying is approaching. Be careful, Qing Miao. During a mission, Yi Qian was no longer Yi Qian, but Qing Miao. Yi Qian didn't stay in the same spot. He walked slowly, step by step, amidst the sound of door shutters closing. Yes, she's been following me. I even know where she parked her car. Don't worry about me, Captain Xia. I walked around here last night. I know where I can go and where I can't. Don't worry about me, Captain Xia. Don't worry about me. My life ended here in my previous life, and it won't repeat itself in this life. She died here, and she was reborn here. Everything would come to an end, and everything would start again. How could she let anything happen to her? She wouldn't let anything happen to her. In this life, she wanted to live a wonderful and meaningful life. How could she let anything happen to her? Chapter 34:41. Xia Jinyuan, who was hiding in the dark, looked at the slender figure walking away step by step. With every step she took, the sadness on her body that made his heart ache inexplicably just now also faintly dissipated. Step by step, she walked from the dark tree to the street lamp. Her whole body was like a sword that cut through the darkness, blocking her way, returning to the light with a fierce aura. When he saw her standing under the dim street lamp, his inexplicably tightened heart gradually relaxed. His blood began to flow again, soothing his stiff limbs. I'll always be watching you, Qing Yao. Don't worry about what's behind you. I'll always be behind you. Xia Jinyuan, who had his hand on his heart, breathed very lightly and said in a very soft voice, just walk forward and do what you want to do. Leave the rest to me. Don't worry about me. Under his palm, his heart was warm and strong. Thump, thump, thump. His heart was beating again and again, but for some reason, he felt that his heart was floating, as if it couldn't find its roots. Just now, when she got out of the car and stood under the tree, she looked up at the old house shrouded in darkness. Her heart, which had always been healthy, felt like it had been ruthlessly stabbed by something. The pain instantly spread to her limbs and bones, as if the blood supply to her heart had been cut off, and her brain had gone dark in an instant. If he hadn't reacted in time and leaned against the cold cement wall with one hand holding onto the water pipe, he would have fallen directly to the ground. This reaction came without warning, but it was also fleeting. He didn't have time to react, and he didn't have time to react. All he could feel was the lingering fear in his heart. It was so strange because Yi Qian was standing under the tree and looking around. The lingering fear in his heart didn't dissipate until she walked out of the birdcage-like banyan tree. It wasn't until he heard her cold but soft voice that his fluttering heart slowly returned to its original position. Yi Qian, who had already reached the street lamp, continued to walk forward. In front of him, there were two children holding a small red lantern. They were laughing and jogging towards him. One was running, and the other was chasing. Behind them, there were 5 adults walking. Seeing that the 2 children were running too fast, their mother raised her voice to remind them, don't run too far. Run slower and be careful not to fall. It was snowing heavily in the southern province. The snow at the farmer's market had been shoveled and piled up by the roadside. At night, when the cold wind blew, it would become hard ice. Even adults would fall if they stepped on it carelessly, let alone children. The child running in front did not look at the road in front of him. In addition, Yi Qian was wearing a black coat and black pants, so he did not stand out. The child giggled and ran towards Yi Qian. Yi Qian stretched out his hand and hurriedly supported the child. He also picked up the small lantern that had fallen to the ground and handed it to the child. He smiled gently and said, "Be careful, darling. It will hurt if you drop it." The child was well educated. He replied in his childish voice, "Thank you, Annie." He took the small lantern and ran back. Yi Qian touched his face. He had become an auntie. This time, Captain Xia felt better. In the past, the child would call him uncle and her sister. He even complained to her that he wanted to be an older brother. Sometimes Captain Xia was just like a child. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The child's mother had already jogged over. She first helped her child before apologizing to Yi Qian. I'm sorry. Did I bump into you?" Chapter 34:42. Yi Qian shook his head and smiled. "No, the road is a little dangerous. It's better to carry the child." The child was only 3 or 4 years old, and it was late at night. It would be safer to carry him. Perhaps Yi Qian's trustworthy instincts reminded the young mother, but she was stunned for a moment and immediately carried the child in her arms. She said, "Thank you," to Yi Qian uneasily and let another young mother carry her child. The group of 7 suddenly quickened their pace and left. Xia Jinyuan's calm and reassuring voice came through the earpiece again. "This child is honest and has a bright future." She had just finished thinking about his childish nature, and it came right away. Yi Qian exhaled a white breath, put his hands back into his coat pockets, and continued to walk forward. The shops on both sides of the street began to put down their shutters one by one, and the sound of the shutters was particularly loud in the quiet night. The owners of the neighboring shops greeted each other, rolled up their shutters, turned off their lights, and went home to wash up and sleep. It was getting late, and the night was getting quieter. Even a sound of footsteps could be heard. It was unknown where the fireworks had been set off, but they exploded in the sky with a bang. Following that, countless soaring cannons shot up into the sky with a whoosh, leaving behind a trail of sparks. In the blink of an eye, they were annihilated, leaving behind only the smell of smoke. Yi Qian looked up slightly. The dazzling fireworks decorated the snowy night. It was the beginning of a new year, and after tonight, she would also welcome a new beginning for herself. Yi Qian did not walk straight. Instead, he swayed as if he was drunk. Occasionally, he would walk under the shade of a tree. Sun Ying, who was following behind him on tiptoe, saw this and sneered. To get to the small hotel where they were resting, they had to pass through the entire farmer's market, take a shortcut, and go around a vegetable market with a cement platform. Then, they had to walk to the hotel on the other side of the road. At the end of the market, all the shopping malls were closed, and only the street lights were dimly lit. The feather-like snow covered the debris that fell during the day, and the firecrackers that exploded into little red flowers were quickly covered. Yi Qian stepped on a pile of firecrackers, and his footprints landed. The snow and firecrackers completely merged into one, like a remnant of red falling to the ground, adding a bit of coldness. It was very quiet, and only the sound of footsteps could be heard. Yi Qian, who was hiding in the dark, heard the soft footsteps suddenly become more urgent. His slender fingers pressed on the earpiece, and he smiled and said to Xia Jinyuan, who was hiding in the dark, "Auntie suddenly disappeared, and some people are starting to get anxious." Soon, he received a reply. Some people felt that tonight wasn't lively enough, so they couldn't help but come out to join in the fun. Bai He and the others are also nearby. Since you've succeeded, they're pulling in the net. After tonight, we can probably go out for a drink together. Really? In that case, I was looking forward to it. They were all practicing during the new year. Since we could meet in the southern province, we should have a good drink. Captain Xia, why don't you be the host? Her voice was soft and gentle, and there was a hint of playfulness in her voice, which made the cold atmosphere suddenly relaxed. Sure, and I'll announce our relationship at the same time, so they'll give up. How about that? He also smiled. His soft voice fell into Yi Qian's heart like a flower blooming, and his smile deepened. She did not want him to come, but he still came. In this life, she was standing at the place where she died in her previous life, and with him by her side. It felt good. It was a pity that she did not meet such a good person in her previous life. If she had met him, would the trajectory of that life be different in that life? Chapter 34-43. No, she was still destined to have the same tragedy. And if she really met him, how would she dare to approach him? In her previous life, Yi Qian was as humble as a speck of dust. In order to survive, she had to flee everywhere just to live to see the sun rise the next day. No matter how difficult it was, she gritted her teeth and endured it. Even the courage to stake everything on a single throw only burst forth at the last moment. In her previous life, she had no one to rely on. In this life, God made it up to her. If it weren't for her previous life, how could she have attracted Captain Xia's attention in this life and made him fall in love with her? And now, he was accompanying her to make the best break with her previous life. It was really worth it. Yi Qian moved softly and hid under the cement platform of the wet market. He smiled warmly and replied, If you really announce it, I believe Mr. Yang and the commander-in-chief will personally come to the unit to talk to you. Oh, don't forget my dad, too. Are you sure you want to announce it to your comrades tonight? With 3 huge mountains pressing down on him at the same time, Xia Jinyuan naturally didn't dare to do anything. I don't dare. I'll just continue to endure it. Xia Jinyuan rubbed his temples helplessly and stared ahead coldly. His voice gradually became cold. The target has entered the wet market with a gun in her hand. What's your plan? I spent some effort to lure her here. First, I'll lure her to shoot. Then, I can take the next step. You've already made your decision? Xia Jinyuan asked. Yi Qian said coldly. This is her choice. As for me, I've never taken the initiative to attack her. It's the most reasonable thing for me to accept her challenge. She had never thought of sparing Sun Ying's life, but she had never thought of taking the initiative to kill her either. Sun Ying had brought about her own destruction step by step. Privately possessing a gun was already a violation of China's criminal law. The lightest sentence was 3 years in prison. In serious cases, it was more than 10 years in prison, life imprisonment, or the death penalty. It was obvious that Sun Ying was aiming for the death penalty. How could she not fulfill her wish? Xia Jinyuan knew that Yi Qian would not allow himself to be caught in the swamp, so he replied with a soft admission. Then he became even more vigilant of the surroundings for Yi Qian. Outside, someone was sitting in a car. He rolled down the window, slightly, and lit a cigarette for himself with a small flame. The flame was extinguished, but there was a faint flicker of sparks. He raised his hand and looked at his watch with a nightlight function. It was 11:30, so it should be about time to end it. Little did he know that this was just the beginning, and there was still some distance to go before it was over. Sun Ying had been running around the dark market for a while now. The person she was staring at had disappeared in the blink of an eye. She was right in front of her, and she was about to shoot her to end her life, but now she could not even find her. Where did he go? Where did he go? Where is that bastard Yi Qian hiding? Sun Ying, who couldn't find him, looked around with a gloomy expression. She gritted her teeth and clenched the gun in her hand even tighter. She kept looking around, searching and searching. Where did he go? Did he go back to the inn? That's impossible. I've been paying attention to my surroundings. I didn't see him leave. He must still be here. Sun Ying, who was secretly following him, did not dare to make too much noise. She kept an eye on the various entrances and exits of the market as she searched again. Suddenly, there was a faint sound coming from a corner. Sun Ying, who was tense, turned around abruptly. At the same time, she aimed the gun in her hand at the corner where the sound came from. She shouted, Yi Qian, get out here! He hated it so much that the name that he had bitten in his heart was squeezed out of his mouth. Chapter 34:44. As she growled, the sound stopped abruptly, followed by a squeaking sound. It was a mouse that had come out to hunt for food in the winter. When Sun Ying saw that it was a rat, she felt that even a rat was bullying her. For a moment, her already twisted face became even more ferocious. Just as Sun Ying was fuming over the noise made by a mouse, a calm and leisurely voice came from behind her. Sun Ying, you came to find me so late. Looks like there's something urgent. As the voice came, Sun Ying's pupils constricted. When a sound of fireworks came from outside, Sun Ying's eyes flashed with malice. She quickly turned around and shot behind her without hesitation. There was no hesitation. Knowing who was talking behind her, her first action was to shoot. Bang! The gunshot rang out in the silent night. It was muffled, but not abrupt, because the sound of the bullet was like the sound of firecrackers in the distance. It was all too normal to hear firecrackers during the Spring Festival. Sun Ying used the sound of fireworks and firecrackers as cover and fired her first shot without hesitation. The bullet hit the red brick wall of the market. The huge impact left a bullet hole in the wall. Sparks shot out from the muzzle of the gun like fireworks, extinguishing with the sound of the gunshot. There was a faint smell of gunpowder in the air. Sun Ying did not panic even though she missed. She raised her gun and smiled coldly. Long time no see, Yi Qian. How have you been? Yi Qian, who was hiding under the counter, did not appear. He smiled and said, I'm not bad. Better than you. Look at you. You've been following me for half the night. You were so anxious to find me. Sunning, do you have something urgent to talk to me about? Yi Qian, who was half crouching under the counter, heard Sun Ying's slow footsteps. She had taken the opportunity to approach while he was talking. Not bad. The few months of training in the underground market overseas had some effect. She was braver than before, to the point where she could shoot and kill at will. TSK, TSK, TSK. Sunning, oh Sunning. This shot was the first piece of evidence for her self-defense. How many more bullets do you plan to shoot next? The more the better. The more, the less she would have to bear the consequences of her counterattack. The criminals were shooting at them with guns, and the military academy students had killed the criminals in order to protect themselves and the safety of the people around them. The reason for the counterattack was valid, and there was no need to bear the consequences. Yi Qian, who had lured Sun Ying into firing the first shot, laughed coldly. In this life, she would definitely protect herself. She would never allow herself to be taken advantage of by someone like Sun Ying. Sun Ying inched forward step by step. From the sound of his voice, she could tell that Yi Qian was not far ahead. He was very, very close to her. At this point, Sun Ying knew that she had to remain calm. So when Yi Qian spoke, her gaze was focused. She looked around silently and did not answer. Even when she heard Yi Qian say that she had been following him for most of the night, she was so shocked that she wanted to question him, but she held herself back. She had to endure a short period of forbearance in exchange for future happiness. It was worth it. When she felt that she was almost there, Sun Ying laughed darkly. Why do you think I'm in such a hurry to find you? Yi Qian, you had so much fun today, talking and laughing with your classmates, eating and singing. Looks like you also know that today is your last chance to party. Yi Qian, it's time to settle the grudge between us. Chapter 34-45. As she spoke, Sun Ying's pistol was already pointing downward. At the same time, she aimed at the empty space under the counter and loaded the gun. She would shoot as soon as she spotted Yi Qian. Yi Qian had already switched positions. She nimbly passed through the empty space under the counter and hit on Sun Ying's right. Then, she smiled and said, "It's time to end this. After stumbling around for so long, it's time to end it tonight." Sun Ying, who thought she had found the right spot, heard Yi Qian's voice coming from her right. Her expression changed, and she quickly pointed the pistol to her right. When did he move to her right? He didn't even make a sound. Sun Ying's heart was suddenly alarmed. She learned from the dark underground market, where it was either you die or I live. She had to be vigilant at all times. When facing someone who looked weaker than her, they could very well be her mortal enemy. At this time, Sun Ying was no longer as arrogant as before. She began to be extra careful. She no longer stood upright, but instead bent down. She applied what she had learned and took action in the dark. Unfortunately, she couldn't achieve anything by imitating someone else. Although she bent down, the sound of her feet moving was still a little loud. The soles of her shoes rubbed against the rough and uneven cement floor of the market, making a small sound. It was very soft, but it was enough for Yi Qian to know what she was doing. "You want to get close to me?" "Sun Ying, you're still a little lacking." Yi Qian pulled out the combat dagger that she had been hiding in her coat. She nimbly left her hiding place and circled behind Sun Ying from the back. Sun Ying was still moving slowly. When she needed to pass under the counter, she practically crawled over with her hands and feet. After passing through 2 counters, her back slowly pressed against the side of the counter. Then, she quickly dodged and fired a second bullet at the counter where she was sure Yi Qian was hiding. The bullet missed again and hit the concrete floor. Bang! The gunshot rang out. At the same time, sparks flew everywhere. A deep crater was left on the concrete floor. There was still no one. Sun Ying, who missed her second shot, widened her eyes in disbelief. How could this be? She clearly heard Yi Qian's voice coming from here. How could he disappear again? When Yi Qian heard another bullet, the smile in his eyes deepened. "Not bad, Sun Ying. Please continue." She was bolder and calmer than before. Unfortunately, it was still not enough. Her determination was not good enough. her temperament was not good enough, and her temper was not good enough. Although she had improved a little and was not as easily angered as before, if she was slightly displeased, that little improvement would not be able to stop her anger. What she wanted was to make her more and more embarrassed. The more embarrassed she was, the more she would not be able to control her actions. In the end, she would fly into a rage out of humiliation, lose her reason, and commit an unforgivable crime. Yi Jian was not a kind person to begin with. She hated Sun Ying to the core in her previous life, but she could do nothing about it. In this life, she was able to return the favor one by one. From the very beginning, Yi Jian did not plan to let Sun Ying live to see the sun tomorrow. What he owed her, he had to pay back. Yi Jian spoke again with a cold smirk on her face. This time, she no longer spoke in the dark. Instead, she stood up openly and said slowly with a pleasant expression and a hint of mockery, "Sun Ying, how confident do you think you are in being able to shoot and kill me? I don't think you're confident at all. In the past, you tried to hurt me, and in the end, you hurt yourself. Do you think you can hurt me now? Sun Ying, you're overestimating yourself." Chapter 3446. Sun Ying, who was still trying to figure out where Yi Qian had gone, suddenly heard a voice coming from behind her. She was so shocked that she shrunk back and subconsciously hid herself under the kitchen counter, not daring to move. She suddenly moved to the left, then to the right, and silently appeared behind her. Was she playing with her? Yi Qian, that be *TCH, was playing with her. She thought that she, Sun Ying, was easy to bully and could be played around with. Just like when she was in middle school, she could clearly write well, but in the end, she deliberately wrote crooked words. In the end, that love letter became the evidence that she wrote to the teacher. She had no choice but to bow her head and admit her mistake in front of Principal Chun. Later on, she could have gone overseas to participate in the competition, but such a good opportunity was ruined by Yi Qian, causing her to suffer a crushing defeat. Even Gao Yang, who liked her so much, distanced himself from her. She finally saw that *TCH lose the right to go to high school, but who knew that she would appear in front of her again a year later and even be assigned to the same class as her. From then on, her nightmare began. Misfortune came one after another, and in the end, because of her, she lost the right to take the college entrance exam. She couldn't even go to a low-class university. It's all Yi Qian's fault. It's all because of that *TCH. Yi Qian, you deserve to die. You deserve to die. Sun Ying, who was squatting down, began to burn with anger. Her eyes were bloodshot as she cursed in her heart. In for a penny, in for a pound. She took out her other pistol. With 2 pistols in hand, she didn't believe that she couldn't kill that *TCH Yi Qian. Sun Ying, you must control your anger. Tonight is your best chance. You must stay calm. You must kill Yi Qian. Once you kill him, you'll be able to turn the tables. No one will be able to stop you. Sun Ying didn't move again. Yi Qian's face grew colder by the day. Sun Ying thought of the events in her previous life. She thought of Yi Ying, who had returned from studying abroad, standing in front of her in all her glory. After Sun Ying finished begging, Yi Ying giggled as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. She laughed until she couldn't stand still. She looked down with disdain in her eyes. She flicked her fingernails as she spoke with a smile. You couldn't beat me in the past. Now, you're like a stray dog. You want to beat me? Sun Ying, you'll never be able to defeat me in this lifetime. You're destined to be trampled under my feet. You're destined to never be able to stand tall. You're destined to have to look at my face for the rest of your life. Yi Ying had said that in her previous life, so in this life, Yi Qian would return those words to her. Tonight, she was going to get back everything that she owed her. The cold voice said the words that Sun Ying could not accept the most. Sun Ying, who already felt that she was being teased, was so angry that her entire face contorted. She would never be able to beat her in her entire life. Was he destined to be stepped on by her for the rest of his life? Was she destined to live her life at her whim? Yi Qian, how dare you? How dare you? At this moment, Sun Ying was completely enraged. The person she hated the most, the person she looked down on the most, actually said that she was destined to live the rest of her life under her nose. She was the winner. She was the biggest winner. How dare a bastard without parents trample on her? Sun Ying, who had lost her rationality, had forgotten that Yi Qian was a military school student. During high school military training, she had hit a perfect chess target in front of the instructor and the entire class. At this moment, Sun Ying only knew that she had to kill Yi Qian with a gun in her hand. She rushed out and started shooting randomly in the direction where Yi Qian was speaking. Bang! 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 The gunshots were accompanied by Sun Ying's exasperated screams. Go to hell, bitch! Go to hell! Bitch! Bitch! Chapter 3447. Yi Qian did not even show himself. If Sun Ying fired blindly, she would be completely exposed. In a situation where there was cover all around, Sun Ying would be digging her own grave. If Xia Jinyuan opened fire, Sun Ying would definitely die. Xia Jinyuan wanted to open fire. When Sun Ying fired the second bullet, he already wanted to do so. Yi Qian stopped him. She said that this was between her and Sun Ying, so she should deal with it alone. After observing for a while, Xia Jinyuan decided not to make a move. Even though Sun Ying had learned a few tricks in the underground market overseas, she was still a far cry from Yi Qian. It was suicidal for a non-professional to go against a professional. Knowing that Yi Qian could handle it, Xia Jinyuan did not make a move for the time being. He paid attention to the surroundings to prevent any pedestrians from entering. It had to be said that Yi Qian had chosen a good location. No one would come to the market at night. Even the homeless outside would avoid it and sleep in a place where they could avoid the cold. Gunshots rang out. The bullets hit the walls and the ground, creating sparks. It echoed with the fireworks outside and did not attract the attention of the nearby residents. Even if they heard it, they would think that someone was setting off fireworks outside and would not even think to get up to take a look. Yi Jian quickly shifted her position under Sun Ying's blind shots. Sun Ying thought that the two guns in her hands could trap Yi Jian in the same place and make her unable to move. She closed in on Yi Jian while shooting. Her beautiful face was ferocious, and the murderous look in her eyes was like that of a venomous snake, baring its fangs and not letting go. Come on out, Yi Qian. Aren't you very capable? Why aren't you coming out now? Didn't you say that you were destined to step on me forever? Ha ha. Do you dare to come out now and say that to me again? I'd like to see if your mouth or my bullets are better. Are your bullets good? I can't tell. Yi Qian, who had circled behind her, said with a smile. As soon as she spoke, Sun Ying's body froze. Before she could react, she felt something pouncing on her from behind. Yi Qian was behind her. When her brain reacted, Sun Ying, who had a ferocious look on her face a second ago, was horrified. She wanted to turn around and shoot again, but suddenly her right arm was grabbed. The pain was so great that she screamed. Ah! Her wrist was bent. How could she still hold the gun with a hot barrel? Bang! The gun fell to the ground. You can't even hold a gun properly. Do you think you can kill me? Yi Qian chuckled and asked, Who do you think is more powerful, bullets or my mouth? With a flip of his hand, he forcefully grabbed Sun Ying's right hand and pulled it back to his shoulder. Sun Ying, who was already pale with fright, once again let out a miserable scream like a pig being slaughtered. Ah, it hurts, it hurts, let go of me. Bitch, let go of me. Flicking her left hand, she aimed the gun behind her and started shooting randomly. Yi Qian was right behind her. Even if she only managed to hit him once, it would be fine. Slut? Even the heavens would not be pleased with a person's self-deprecation. Sun Ying, you're seeking your own death. What's this little pain compared to? I've tolerated you for long enough. Since you said you wanted to settle the score today, then let's settle it properly. Yi Qian, whose eyes were filled with malice, gripped Sun Ying's shoulder tightly. The silver wire that she hadn't used for a long time appeared in her hand again. With lightning speed, she wrapped it around Sun Ying's left hand, which could still move normally. After wrapping it tightly, she pulled it back forcefully. Sun Ying felt something wrap around her wrist, and then her entire left arm was pulled back. Sun Ying screamed in agony. Chapter 3448. Yi Qian didn't hold back. Facing Sun Ying, the person who had forced him into a corner in his previous life, Yi Qian didn't even think about holding back. Sun Ying had two guns in her hands. One of them wasn't equipped with a silencer, while the other was equipped with a silencer. During the military meeting yesterday, the person in charge of the National Defense Department told him that Sun Ying had gone to an underground market overseas and underwent a brutal crash course. Although the training was short, it was all about stepping over other people's dead bodies to survive. It can make a person lose all humanity in a short period of time. As long as they thought someone was in their way, they deserved to die. Sun Ying now belonged to this type of person. She no longer had any respect for other people's lives, only contempt and plunder. She even thought it was right and proper. Just like earlier, when she realized that she couldn't do anything to Yi Qian, she launched a frenzied attack. She didn't think about the serious consequences of firing randomly. Because he knew that Sun Ying had undergone inhumane training, Yi Qian was very careful when choosing the location of the duel. In the end, he chose the farmer's market to avoid hurting the innocent. Sun Ying's sudden shooting made Yi Qian's eyes turn fierce. She strangled Sun Ying's wrist with a silver wire until her entire left arm was twisted in a strange arc behind her back. Her entire arm was twisted in the opposite direction. This was all thanks to Sun Ying's dancing since she was young. Her basic skills were solid, and her body was very flexible. Yi Qian had to twist her entire arm in order to make her scream in pain. If it were a normal person, even a simple twist of both hands would cause the person to pale in pain. Sun Ying had basic skills, so Yi Qian had to put in more effort to make her feel pain. At this time, Sun Ying was in so much pain that her forehead was covered in sweat. Her arm, especially her elbow, the bone was in so much pain that it felt like it was about to break. Even her tendons were poking out of her skin. The gun in her left hand fell to the ground. Sun Ying, who was no longer holding a gun, lost the weapon that gave her so much confidence. Panic began to rise in her heart. She was panicking, but her mouth didn't show any signs of weakness. Instead, she shouted even louder, "Yi Qian, you bitch! Let me go, let me go! What are you doing? What are you doing? Let me go, let me go!" Even as she screamed, she didn't forget to continue shouting. This was the real Sun Ying. Otherwise, it wouldn't be her. As she struggled, she did not realize that tonight was the day of her death. Or rather, it could be said that Sun Ying had never thought that she would one day lose her life in the hands of Yi Qian, because she had always thought that Yi Qian would lose his life in her hands. At this point, even if she was in a place where she could not resist, she still did not realize it. It was important to know oneself. If one didn't even have the most basic self-awareness, then one would be stupid. On the other hand, Sun Ying had looked down on Yi Qian ever since she was young. She took pleasure in bullying Yi Qian. When she was young, all she knew was to chase after Yi Qian and hit him with things. When she grew up, not only did she not change, she became even more aggressive. She bullied Yi Qian in a way that made Yi Qian even more afraid. Over time, whenever she faced Yi Qian, she would always think that she was stronger than Yi Qian and that Yi Qian should listen to her orders. After more than 10 years, this habit had become Sun Ying's nature. A leopard can change its spots, but a leopard can't. Even if Yi Qian went further and further away to Sun Ying, Yi Qian was still the same Yi Qian who should have been obedient and let her beat and scold him, because she refused to see the reality clearly and refused to accept it. Chapter 3449. The consequence of avoiding it and refusing to admit that Yi Qian had far surpassed her was that she still believed that Yi Qian should be bullied by her and should not fight back. Moreover, she had gone overseas to train for several months in that ruthless underground market. Her hands were stained with the blood of several people. She was able to endure pain that normal people would not be able to endure and come back to the country. She was even more confident than before. Although she was panicking, she was not panicking. She still knew how to break free. Sun Ying's eyes flashed with malice as her forehead broke out in cold sweat from the pain. She continued to scream and curse. At the same time, she began to use the basic combat skills she had learned in the underground market to fight Yi Qian. Since her arms could not move normally, she used her legs. Needless to say, with her solid foundation in dancing, she spun her waist and raised one leg. Her entire leg was raised perfectly straight. Her stance was so perfect that it looked like she was really a fighter. Suddenly, Yi Qian instinctively dodged to avoid her sudden kick. Yi Qian, do you really think I'm the same Sun Ying as before? As he dodged, Yi Qian heard her speak through gritted teeth. She sounded a little smug. How could she not be smug? Before she even started, Yi Qian had already taken a step back. Her panicked heart instantly calmed down. The big boss was right. What was Yi Qian? He was just a small cadet from the military academy. Cadets nowadays were all just for show. They could not lift anything with their hands or shoulders. On the surface, they looked majestic, but in reality, they could only look and not take a beating. Just like now. She had not used her killer move yet, but Yi Qian had already dodged out of fear. Yi Qian did not expect Sun Ying to suddenly counterattack. Looking at her combat moves, they were all Western combat skills. His dark eyes narrowed slightly. He released the other end of the silver wire that was wrapped around Sun Ying's arm and pulled it back gently. A faint silver light flashed in the darkness, and the silver wire that was wrapped around Sun Ying's arm returned to her hand. The extremely thin silver thread slowly wrapped around her wrist, becoming an extremely ordinary bracelet. Yi Qian half raised his eyes and said with a faint smile, I'd like to see if you're really not the Sun Ying of the past. Her twisted left arm was suddenly freed. Sun Ying was overjoyed. Now, she could even move her arms normally. Even if she did not have a gun in her hand, she would not be afraid. Sun Ying slowly moved her shoulder, which was still in pain, and gently shook her arms. Her eyes flashed with a cruel light as she said in a twisted voice, Yi Qian, you asked for it. As she spoke, she took the initiative to attack. As long as she thought that she could get rid of the person she hated the most, she didn't want to wait a moment longer. When Yi Qian heard this, he smiled faintly. Facing Sun Ying's attack, he nimbly dodged. At the same time, the military combat dagger in his hand slashed out. In the darkness, there was the sound of fabric being torn. Immediately after, Sun Ying felt a sudden pain in her arm. Something sharp had cut her arm. Sun Ying did not immediately deal with it. Feeling the pain, she raised her leg and kicked Yi Qian in the stomach. The pain in her arm intensified. In an instant, Sun Ying realized what had cut her arm. A knife? You actually have a knife on you. B*TCH, you actually use a knife to hurt me. Realizing that it was a knife that had cut her, Sun Ying was furious. She wanted to eat Yi Qian alive, but she did not have a knife or a gun in her hands. She could only fight with her bare hands. Chapter 3450. After a few months of training, she had indeed learned some skills. Otherwise, Sun Ying would not have been so confident that she could definitely kill Yi Qian. Her next attack was a fatal one, all aimed at Yi Qian's neck, eyes, abdomen, and other weak spots. Her second attack missed again. Her left arm was injured, but her right arm was scratched instead. Her third attack also missed. Her calf was scratched again, and the pain was so great that she could barely stand. Her previously confident expression was now filled with doubt. On her fourth attack, Yi Qian threw her over his shoulder, sending her crashing to the ground. Sun Ying's fall was not light this time. She was in a daze from a fall and did not get up for a long time. How could this be? How could this be? Didn't Big Boss say that Yi Qian was just a military academy student who could be seen but not used? Why did she miss again and again? So painful, so painful. Her hands and feet were in so much pain. The wounds must be very deep, and she must have lost a lot of blood. She could even feel the scabs forming on her sleeves and trousers. The scabs were all formed by her blood. She had lost so much blood, but not once had she hurt that bastard Yi Qian. Not once had he hit her. How could this be? It shouldn't be like this. She shouldn't be the one getting hurt again and again. She should be the one beating that bastard down again and again. It was the opposite. It was the opposite. All of it was the opposite. Sun Ying was in a daze from the fall. Her mind was blank. Only the deepest insistence in her heart kept urging her to stand up quickly and kill Yi Qian as soon as possible. I won't let you go, Yi Qian. I will kill you. I will kill you. Sun Ying could not accept being hurt again and again. She searched the ground with her hands, trying to find something that could hurt him. Yi Qian laughed when she heard that. Her low and shallow voice entered her ears along with the cold wind. Her face was cold, and she was bone-chilling. It's rare that we have the same idea. That's great. I've never thought of letting you go. Yi Qian did not give Sun Ying another chance to get up. With a fierce look in her eyes, she once again pinned Sun Ying's hands behind her back. Then, she used one of her knees to crush Sun Ying's knees so that Sun Ying could not move her lower body. Sun Ying was pressed to the ground. Her face was cold and dirty. She could even smell blood on the ground. Sun Ying began to struggle madly. Let go of me, bastard. Let go of me. Let go of me. This was a pork stall. Naturally, the smell of blood could be smelled. Sun Ying struggled fiercely. Her face rubbed against the coarse gravel and scratched the surface of the surface. Let you go? Sun Ying, do you think you can leave this place alive tonight? Do you still think that you can survive tonight and continue to think about how to kill me tomorrow morning? Sun Ying, Sun Ying. Tell me, do you think I will let you live until tomorrow? The silver wire wrapped around Sun Ying's wrist again and again. The more Sun Ying struggled, the tighter the wire became. Even through her clothes, it was so tight that it felt like it was going to cut into her flesh. What was it that was wrapped around her arm? Why was it getting tighter and tighter? Also, what did she just say? She said she would not live past tonight? She said she would not live past tomorrow? Yi Qian, bastard. She dared. She dared. Sun Ying cherished her life. She exploded when she heard this. Her eyes widened in anger. Just as she was about to scream, Yi Qian suddenly pulled her up from behind. She heard her shout, "Stand up." Chapter 34:51. Yi Qian twisted Sun Ying's collar from behind. Sun Ying felt suffocated and had no choice but to stand up on her own. Before she could steady herself, Sun Ying's knees were kicked hard. Yi Qian kicked her until she was kneeling on the ground. Before Sun Ying could say anything, her knees hit the cold and uneven cement floor. She screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Her arms were tied behind her back, and her knees were on the ground. Sun Ying looked like a prisoner being executed in the 70s or 80s. She was only missing a wooden plank behind her arms. Her body was in pain, but it was nothing compared to what Yi Qian had said. She struggled to get up, and her voice was loud enough to lift the entire market. Yi Qian, you dare to kill me? You dare to kill me? Do you know who I am? Yi Qian laughed. If you dare to kill me, why wouldn't I dare to kill you? Ha ha ha, you dare to kill me? Ha ha ha. Yi Qian, do you know who's behind me? If you kill me, ha ha ha, the person behind me won't let you go if he finds out. He won't let you die even if you beg for it. Sun Ying, who was in extreme pain, started laughing again. It was really funny. A bastard dared to say he would kill her. Ha ha ha. She said she would kill her too. Ha ha. Her laughter suddenly disappeared. It was as if someone had grabbed her by the neck. All the sound was swallowed back into her stomach. Sun Ying's face turned red. Her whole body froze in an instant, and all her arrogance disappeared in an instant. There was something cold pressed against her neck. It was very sharp. It pierced through the delicate skin on her neck. Although the pain was not as painful as when her arms were twisted, this was the neck. The most vulnerable and fatal part of her body was pierced by something sharp. Sun Ying's heart suddenly contracted, and the corner of her mouth twitched fiercely a few times. What are you doing, Yi Qian? What are you doing? It was not a scream, but a scream of fear. The sharp blade of the military combat dagger rubbed against Sun Ying's neck. It wasn't heavy, it was very light. Even so, the blade still cut into her skin and continued to cut deeper. The blood that formed a line slowly flowed to the blade groove, making it more lubricated and allowing the sharp blade to cut deeper into the subcutaneous tissue without stagnation. What I want to do? Sunning, what do you think I'm doing? Didn't I just say that I want to kill you? I've already told you clearly. Why are you still asking me what I want to do? The answer is the same. You want to kill me, and I also want to kill you. I thought that it would take some time and effort to kill you. Who would have thought that you would actually deliver yourself to my doorstep and seek your own death? You really saved me a lot of trouble. I don't even need to think about it. The cold words, without a trace of warmth, entered Sun Ying's ears. As the pain in her neck intensified, Sun Ying's pupils constricted. The cold voice was like a bucket of cold water being poured on her heart, causing her heart to tremble uncontrollably. You want me to die, Sun Ying? Why wouldn't I want you to die? I want it too. I've thought about it for a long, long time. I've been waiting for this day to come. I can kill you with my own hands without any burden. See, I've been waiting for this day. You delivered yourself to my doorstep. Ying, do you think I'll let you go? Chapter 3452. In front of her was Sun Ying and Ying. Both of them were so detestable in their past lives. It could finally end. The hatred from the past life and the hatred from this life could finally end on this day. At this moment, Yi Qian didn't hide his killing intent at all. It was cold, sharp, and ruthless. All the hatred from the past life exploded out at this moment. He didn't hide it at all. He directly let Sun Ying know that she wouldn't live past tonight. It was also at this moment that the hatred that she had been suppressing in the depths of her heart and didn't want anyone to know about it gushed out like a tidal wave. The corner of her heart that had been hiding a secret that no one knew about flowed with hatred. It was like a festering wound that finally squeezed out pus until blood dripped out. Even though it was bloody, Yi Qian only felt relieved. Pus was released and blood was shed. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Everything that had happened between Yi Ying and Sun Ying in the past life was finally over. She said those words that were full of hostility and murderous intent. It also turned the mountain-like emotions that she had been suppressing for so long into nothingness. It was relaxing, really relaxing. Her body and heart, inside and out, it was really relaxing. The things that she didn't dare to say, the things that she couldn't say, the things that she didn't dare to do, the things that she couldn't do, they could all be done tonight. It was relaxing, really relaxing. She washed away the thick layers of dust. She washed them clean again and again. It was relaxing, really relaxing. Sun Ying, retribution begets retribution. From the moment she pulled out her gun, she was destined to die. She didn't even need to do it herself. The law wouldn't let Sun Ying off either. Yi Qian relaxed, but Sun Ying didn't feel relaxed. In an instant, Sun Ying realized that Yi Qian wasn't just scaring her. She said that she wanted to kill her. She was serious. She really wanted to kill herself. Sun Ying, who had never thought that Yi Qian also wanted to kill her, panicked. After realizing this, a huge wave of panic engulfed her. Fear came crashing down like a tsunami. The trembling spread from her heart until her entire body started shaking uncontrollably. Her teeth began to chatter. Her voice was trembling like thin paper. She was panicking. No, you can't kill me. You can't kill me. Yi Qian, don't forget who you are. That's right, don't forget your identity. Knowing that Yi Qian would really kill her, Sun Ying was scared. How could she not be scared? Her life could be in danger at any time. How could she, who cherished her life, not be afraid? At the mention of Yi Qian's identity, Sun Ying was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a piece of driftwood. She began to threaten him with Yi Qian's identity as a military academy student. You can't kill me. If you kill me, you won't have a good ending either. Although Sun Ying saw other people's lives as worthless, she was very careful with her own life. She knew that Yi Qian would really kill her, so she endured the pain in her body and fought for a chance to live. Murder is against the law. If you kill me, you will be committing murder. If I die, you won't have a good ending either. Let go of me, do you hear me? I told you to let me go. She believed that she had found a way to survive and even tried to use the law to protect herself. Sun Ying was indeed smart, but she was also very stupid. Things had already come to this point, and she still thought that she could live. After doing so many bad things, and even exposing Principal Chen's identity, she still wanted to leave? She was delusional, but her words weren't without reason. As a military academy student, he couldn't just kill Sun Ying because he wanted to. Chapter 3453. Sun Ying's fate was sealed. Her hatred from 2 lifetimes had also ended because of her fate. This was good. She didn't have to dirty herself. All she had to do was watch Sun Ying walk towards her death. Everything should be going smoothly outside. If it wasn't, Captain Xia would have come over to remind her. Since everything was going according to plan, she could have a better conversation with Sun Ying. Yi Qian, who was relaxed, could clearly feel Sun Ying's fear. The more afraid she was, the deeper the smile on Yi Qian's face became. He said coldly, "If I can kill you, I have a good reason to do so." In her previous life, Yi Qian was just as afraid. Even when he walked on the streets, he was afraid that someone would suddenly rush out and stab him with a knife. Being threatened by a knife at his neck was not something that had never happened before. Today, it was finally Sun Ying's turn to have a taste of her own medicine. It must be uncomfortable. Of course it was uncomfortable. Sun Ying, who didn't know what Yi Qian was thinking, was so scared that she started to cry. She was scared. Tears streamed down her face. Her body curled up into a ball, but she didn't dare to move. Yi Qian's knife was still pressed against her neck. If she moved, even a little, the sharp edge of the knife would pierce deeper. Xia Jinyuan, who had been paying attention to his surroundings, ended the call with the military. He walked out of the darkness. He was still some distance away from Yi Qian. He wanted to get closer before he spoke, but he heard Yi Qian say, "You're right. I can't kill you." Xia Jinyuan stopped in his tracks. His eyes darkened. He was paying attention to his surroundings. At the same time, he didn't miss the conversation between Yi Qian and Sun Ying. He didn't pay much attention to what Sun Ying said, but he heard every word Yi Qian said clearly. He didn't know his girlfriend hated Sun Ying so much. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that her hatred for Sun Ying was overwhelming. This hatred was too deep. It was so deep that he wondered if she was hiding something from him. Otherwise, why would she hate Sun Ying so much? It was as if several lifetimes' worth of enmity, several lifetimes' worth of hatred, had all erupted just now. For a short period of time, he thought about what had happened between her and Sun Ying. The only explanation he could think of was why there was such hatred. There was only one possibility. She had suppressed it for too long when she was young, and later on, she had no choice but to suppress it again for various reasons. It was like a bottle that was constantly filled with air. The bottle was only so big, but the air kept pouring in. In the end, the bottle exploded and the emotions exploded. This was the only way to explain why his hatred was so deep. At this moment, no matter how smart Xia Jinyuan was, he would never have thought that Yi Qian's accumulated hatred from 2 lifetimes would explode in an instant. The hatred was too deep, so deep that it made his heart feel heavy. It was so heavy that he couldn't even breathe continuously. The emotions that erupted from her were not only hatred, but also despair that made him feel suffocated. It seemed that the only way to release that despair was to get rid of Sun Ying with his own hands. When he felt this way, he heard the familiar stern voice in his ear. He didn't even dare to answer directly. Instead, he replied ambiguously, "I'll try my best to stop her." What he meant was that he was a little far away from Yi Qian. If Yi Qian really did something, he probably wouldn't be able to do anything. What exactly did Sun Ying do in the past to make the usually optimistic Yi Qian feel so hopeless? Chapter 3454. Did something he didn't know about really happen? If the only way to be free was to get rid of Sun Ying personally, Xia Jinyuan had already thought of a way to help her. But when he heard her calmly say that she wouldn't kill Sun Ying, he couldn't help but close his eyes. His little fox was calm and restrained. She obviously wanted to get rid of Sun Ying right then and there. but she still chose to let the law punish Sun Ying. The military and national defense had both clearly stated that if Sun Ying was found to have done anything harmful to society, she could be killed on the spot without taking any responsibility. Just now, Sun Ying's actions could have killed her on the spot, but Yi Qian restrained himself. With such deep hatred, such deep despair, she still restrained herself and made the best and most correct choice. This choice made Xia Jinyuan's heart ache. His heart ached for Yi Qian's calmness and restraint. She was a military academy student whose actions were strictly restrained. Killing Sun Ying would be easy, but if she really did kill her, it would also cause trouble for her in the future. A special forces soldier who had undergone rigorous training against a criminal who had only been trained for a few months and then killed the criminal after he had already captured the criminal. If this matter was really investigated, it would definitely be used and tampered with by people with ulterior motives. As for Sun Ying, when she heard Yi Qian personally admit that he couldn't kill her, she was momentarily stunned. Knowing that she wouldn't have to die tonight, she threw her head back and laughed out loud. "Ha ha, Yi Qian, you can't kill me. You can't kill me." Sun Ying, who had just escaped death, really thought that she could leave. When she thought about how Yi Qian couldn't kill her, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yi Qian looked at Sun Ying, who was still unaware of her impending death, and smiled faintly. Sun Ying was the perfect example of the saying, "The ignorant are fearless." Military academy student. What a pitiful military academy student. You clearly wanted to kill me, but in the end, you still can't kill me. Yi Qian, you'll never be able to kill me. Only I can kill you. Do you hear me? Only I can kill you. This time, there was no need for Yi Qian to speak. Xia Jinyuan walked over and said coldly, "Yi Qian didn't kill you not because he couldn't, but because he found you dirty." When Xia Jinyuan walked over, Yi Qian no longer pressed the dagger against Sun Ying's neck. He slowly stood up and stood to the side, vigilantly blocking off all possible escape routes. He held the dagger in his hand and was on guard. Xia Jinyuan walked closer and stood in front of Sun Ying, looking down at her. His voice was cold and calm as he said, "Didn't you just say that murder is against the law?" "That's right, murder is against the law. No one is an exception, including you. You can't kill Yi Qian, and Yi Qian won't dirty his hands by killing you. He doesn't need to do anything unnecessary. He only needs to quietly watch you walk toward your death." The sudden male voice made Sun Ying, who was kneeling on the ground and laughing loudly, stop laughing. She raised her head and looked at the tall figure walking towards her. When she heard him say that Yi Qian only needed to quietly watch her walk towards her death, she heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she suddenly tensed up and said sternly, "What a joke. Watching me walk towards my death? Who do you think you are? We all know what you've done abroad. Who are you calling a bunch of green onions and garlic? You killed someone overseas, then came back to our country and tried to kill a military academy student. You even carried a gun that is prohibited by our country. At the same time, you did something harmful to society. You shot a total of 13 live bullets. There's only one ending for you. Do you understand?" Chapter 3455. He took out a pair of white gloves and put them on. Then, he took out a mini flashlight and turned on the light source. He picked up the two pistols. One is a custom-made pistol, and the other is an assembled pistol. "Sun Ying, these are the evidence of your crimes. And we even have photos of the crime scene as evidence of your murder. Tell me, what do you think will happen to you? 5 lives, and one of them was a child. Do you want me to show you the photos of your murder?" If Sun Ying could still hold her head high when facing Yi Qian earlier, then now, her face was ashen, and she was completely paralyzed on the ground. 5 lives and a child. Didn't they say no one would find out? How did someone find out? Who was this man? How did he find out? Earlier, Sun Ying was only afraid that Yi Qian would kill her. But now, Sun Ying knew that she couldn't live. She couldn't live. No. She had to live. She had to live. She was still so young. She didn't want to die. She didn't want to die. When a person was faced with a life-or-death situation, Their potential was limitless. Sun Ying, who was paralyzed on the ground, had never been more aware that she couldn't live. In order to survive, in order to escape, she suddenly stood up and slammed forward with unparalleled agility. She wanted to knock Yi Qian aside and open up a path for herself to escape. Who knew? Yi Qian, who was in charge of defense, didn't put away the dagger in his hand. Instead, he instinctively used the dagger as a defensive weapon. Sun Ying slammed forward. Her desire to escape caused her potential to explode, and her speed became exceptionally fast. She was so fast that Yi Qian didn't have time to put away the dagger. With a pew-pew sound, the sharp military combat dagger pierced Sun Ying's body. It was too fast, too fierce, and too hurried. There wasn't any buffer. The entire dagger pierced in her body, leaving only the handle in Yi Qian's hand. Sun Ying, whose hand was still clasped behind her back, froze. She felt pain in her chest. It was not the pain of her hands being twisted behind her back, nor was it the pain of her knees hitting the ground. Instead, it was the pain of her heart being stabbed. All the nerves in her body were in pain. Sun Ying did not even have the chance to scream as she leaned against the dagger in Yi Qian's hand. She wanted to lower her head to see what it was that made her heart ache so much. When she lowered her head slightly, something thick and viscous surged up her throat. She could not even swallow it as it flowed out of her mouth. It was blood. Blood was spilling out her mouth. Yi Qian had already let go of her and quickly held her shoulders to let her lean into his embrace. Xia Jinyuan shone the miniature flashlight in his hand. In the bright light, he saw the military combat dagger sticking out of Sun Ying's heart. "Don't touch her. I'll contact 120 now." Xia Jinyuan's expression did not change in the face of the sudden situation. He calmly took out his phone and dialed 120. His words were concise and precise. At the same time, he reported the situation back to the military. The military called to remind Yi Qian not to act rashly, in case he made a mistake in the heat of the moment. This mistake referred to capturing Sun Ying alive and not killing her for personal reasons. Yi Qian was easy to control. Unfortunately, Sun Ying had dug her own grave. She directly bumped into Yi Qian and ended up harming herself. She might not even live to see the sun tomorrow. Yi Qian, who had already given up on killing Sun Ying himself, frowned slightly. He lowered his gaze and looked at the dagger that was embedded in Sun Ying's chest. He allowed a soft sigh. Chapter 3456. This turn of events was truly unexpected. Out of respect for life, she didn't let her emotions control her and used the most direct method to take Sun Ying's life. This was because she didn't want to become someone like Sun Ying, who didn't care about other people's lives. She also didn't want to add to her military career. Therefore, even though she wanted to personally kill Sun Ying, who she hated for 2 lifetimes, in the end, she chose to punish Sun Ying through legal means. Her ending was a dead end. Since that was the case, why should she take the risk? She might as well choose the most appropriate way to end everything. But she didn't expect Sun Ying to throw herself at the knife. Time and fate. He had died in her hands in his previous life, and today, she had died in his hands. Everything had ended with this stab. In her previous life, she didn't have a fixed place to stay and had no one to rely on. She didn't have any great power or anyone to rely on. She couldn't defeat Yi Jifan and Yi Ying on her own. In this life, step by step, step by step, step by step, Sun Yaozu fell, old Madame Yi fell, Yi Jifan fell, Sun Donqing fell, and now, Sun Ying fell. Yi Qian, who had completely let go of the shackles in his heart, hugged Sun Ying and stared at the knife in her chest. Other than that, he didn't do anything else. Although it was over, she couldn't let go of all her hatred and treat Sun Ying with a normal heart. She only chose to punish Sun Ying through legal means. She never thought of forgiving Sun Ying. She was stabbed, and her morals didn't allow her to leave her in the lurch. Sun Ying said she was in pain and sorry, but she didn't want to say a word of comfort. She wasn't a saint. She couldn't say things like, "It doesn't hurt, I'll definitely save you," to the person who wanted to kill her. She couldn't even lie to Sun Ying. As such, she remained silent and waited for the ambulance to arrive. Sunning had already seen what was stuck in her chest. Her pupils constricted to a small dot. She felt her body temperature drop as she stared at Yi Qian with wide eyes. She opened her bloody mouth in horror and begged, "Save me, save me. I don't want to die. Save me. I beg you, Yi Qian, please save me." Every time she spoke a word, blood would flow out of Sun Ying's mouth. Soon, even her neck was covered in blood. It was extremely terrifying. There was too much blood, and his collar was wet, turning dark brown. It was the same for her chest. Blood was flowing out of the dagger, and her entire chest was soaked. If she continued to bleed like this, Sun Ying would die from excessive blood loss before the ambulance arrived. A military dagger was different from an ordinary dagger. It was a cold weapon with great lethality. It had terrible piercing and cutting power. The design of the blood grooves would also increase the amount of bleeding. Once the wound was pierced, the blood grooves would also deepen the wound. Now that the dagger was deep in Sun Ying's heart, even if she waited for the ambulance to arrive, she wouldn't make it to the hospital. Sun Ying, who was afraid of death, knew that she might not survive, but she had to beg. As long as there was a chance, she had to beg. She was afraid that Yi Qian would abandon her and leave her to lie there alone, bleeding and motionless, waiting for death to come. She was afraid that Yi Qian would do that, because if Yi Qian was the one being stabbed, she would definitely turn around and leave without hesitation. She would even laugh and leave. She wouldn't care about the life and death of others. Now that her life was in danger, she was afraid that Yi Qian would do that. Chapter 34:57. The evilness and complexity of human nature were vividly displayed by Sun Ying. She strictly demanded the highest moral standards from others, but when it came to herself, her moral standards dropped even lower, to the point where she had lost her most basic principles. Yi Qian had already seen through Sun Ying. Faced with her pleading, Yi Qian faintly pursed his lips and said coldly, "Sun Ying, you're about to die. Don't use your conduct to question me. I'll stay here and wait for the ambulance to come. Also, you'd better speak less. The more you speak, the more your wound will be affected." The knife was stabbed in the heart. If you want to die early, you can speak as much as you want. He didn't want to listen to her at all. She'd better shut up. Sun Ying was evil by nature. Did Yi Qian expect her to repent before she died? He was thinking too much. That was impossible. Xia Jinyuan didn't leave. He also stayed where he was. He had already reported the situation to the military. Sun Ying's life depended on her luck. As Sun Ying's consciousness gradually faded, she vaguely heard Yi Qian say something. Blood gushed out of her mouth, and her eyelids began to droop. Her strong will to live made her raise her eyelids involuntarily. After repeating this a few times, Sun Ying knew that she couldn't live. Her life had really come to an end. Using the last of her strength, she opened her eyes wide and glared at Yi Qian, who was hugging her coldly. That face was still so hateful. Every time she saw it, she couldn't help but want to kill him. "Yi Qian, I won't be satisfied if I don't kill you." In the end, Sun Ying still couldn't forget about killing Yi Qian. At this moment, Xia Jinyuan turned on the recording on his phone. This was Sun Ying's last words. He could record it and submit it to the military later. When Yi Qian heard this, he coldly pursed his lips and said calmly, "I've never regretted not being able to kill someone. Many people have died by my hands. You're also my enemy. However, I don't have to do it myself. You will also receive the strictest punishment. Unfortunately, you have bad intentions. You walked into the knife's edge and killed yourself. You're courting death. Courting death." Sun Ying's pale face revealed a strange expression. She looked like she was smiling, yet not smiling, and she looked like she was crying, yet not crying. She had never thought that she would be courting death. "If I die, you won't live long either. Yi Qian, you won't live long either. I want to kill you, but there are others who want to kill you as well." She hated it so much. Why didn't that be *TCH Yi Qian die? Why was she the one who died? How hateful! How hateful! Why didn't Yi Qian die instead? Why? Why? She caused her to lose all her glory, caused her to lose everything. Even her family was ruined because of her. Why? Why didn't Yi Qian die instead? Why? Why? Unfair, too unfair. In the end, she was the one who died. So hateful, so hateful, so unreconciled, so unreconciled. You won't live long either. Yi Qian, you won't live long either. In the last moments of her life, short and rapid breaths came from her throat. Her mouth was filled with blood, and her eyes were wide open. Her eyes and face were filled with evil. She used the last of her strength to gasp for air. Gradually, her breaths became softer and softer. Sun Ying's fingers twitched. Death had finally come. The light in her eyes disappeared, leaving only a remnant of fear. Even when she stopped breathing, it did not dissipate. Until death, Sun Ying never regretted her actions, nor did she think that she was wrong. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.